Bradley, we've kept them waiting for long enough.
It's the Pact episode.
So instead of doing a bunch of mini episodes, Bradley rathered us do like a big book talk, like we kind of do with the Stormlight archives and stuff like that. And you know what? That makes sense. We got to like arc 6 or 7, right? As far as like
Yeah.
individual talks, but then the audiobook that we were following for Pact just kind of stopped for a while, and man, we were getting down bad there during the wait. I was
Yeah.
genuinely
Uh,
losing hope.
it was a Speed Chuck's audiobook.
Oh.
And God, the quality is fantastic.
What a
He has such
freaking
good
legend.
voice.
He has a
It was,
great voice. He gets good guests.
And like, I feel like for each character, he was able to like give them a distinct
Inflection.
voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was funny when he was doing his afterword after the last chapter. He was just like, "Oh, everyone, thanks for listening to my book," and I was like, "Blake's talking to me."
Blake, I hope you're all right.
I know,
So,
dude.
we wanted to do this because there's so much to cover with the story. We're not going to go like by arc or anything like that. And especially also because the characters are revolving in a way where the character cast is much smaller than Worm, but they also show up frequently. So talking about a character would cover a lot of their significance to the story. But we also found a tier list for these characters
Of course.
right before we started. So we're like, hey, what if we just do a 2-in-1 tier list?
If anyone
plus-
knows this channel,
Yeah.
they knew that if there's a tier list.
I will say our Worm tier list is our second most popular video. So,
Yeah, how about that, huh?
how about that? I'm glad. I hope Wild Bow fans can enjoy this.
Yeah.
So yeah, where do we start with this, Bradley? First of all, okay, thank you for whoever made this tier list, Mr. Hatam Fatah. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
However, I'd rather have no pictures than some. Actually, I'd rather have no pictures. Period. But the pictures we did get, we should probably break down who they are. This is Alexis
Okay.
and the Astrologer,
Right.
Barbatorum, which
Yo, dude.
let me hit you with a little bit of a zoom in too. So
Yeah,
you
let's
can
get
see
some
the
zoom
artwork.
action. Ooh, he is a nasty boy.
Conquest, Green Eyes, of course.
Yo.
Fucking Katherine Thorburn, for some reason, gets a
Jesus. Who draws her?
picture. Maggie Holt, Miss Lewis, Evan.
Oh my god, that's Evan.
You'd have to zoom
Damn.
really deep in to see the bird part of
He
it.
looks
but
so
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, shout outs to all these artists who made these. The Green Eyes art is so freaking cool.
Hell yeah.
The Hyena. We got our boy Blake Thorburn, which I think this is a fantastic art as well.
It's amazing art.
We've got Rose Thorburn, and best but definitely least at the same time, Paws.
How adorable. He looks like a Neopet.
Yeah, I doubt that's not what I was picturing, but all right.
He's so kawaii.
How do we start this, man?
Before we do characters, do we just want to do like a quick, like, each of us 2 or 3 sentence overall thoughts on the book?
You can go first. I want to see what your overall thoughts are.
Man, highly underrated. We've talked about it before, where there was a long period of time where I just didn't really give Pact a chance because people on the subreddit can be hard on it, and I feel like lately people are being better at giving like Pact the praise it's due.
I've seen
And I think
some,
a lot of,
I've seen some
yeah.
people speak up for it.
I think more people have tried it since Pale came out, because it seems like a lot of people just skipped over it, like I did. But I don't know. A lot of people are like, if you're expecting Worm again, probably don't give it a try. And you know what?
Fair.
Those people are correct, because it's not Worm again. It's something totally different, and I'm so glad.
It's if I had to give a quick summary, I love this story. It's probably my favorite book, if you want to call it a book, as it's a web serial. And I really ended up liking Worm by the end of it, but like Pact grabbed me almost immediately and never let go. And I think
I know.
it's a wild ride with very few low points and very many high points. I will say, in some ways, it's a little less tight of a story than Worm, as far as like, and we'll get to it, like some character motivations. I just had to refresh myself on some of the motivations because they're explained in the story but the situations are always so tense that they're explained and then we have to move on immediately. So I never
Yeah.
got to absorb a lot of like the minutia of certain characters' motivations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But thankfully, and this is a shout out as well, Deep Impact had us covered in that front, where I pretty much listened to almost every Deep Impact episode to
Oh, wow.
kind of serve as a side component to be listening to the story.
Cool.
So yeah, we can start, but who or how do we start? We could maybe go just by order, but skipping the main characters, or go by kind of like introduction. Either way, I think we got to keep the main characters till near the end.
Oh yeah, for sure. You know what?
We
Let
could,
me pick one out here. Well, let me just pick up Andy. Let's get Andy. And you know what? It's a letter A name. Is he first alphabetically? He's not first alphabetically, but you know what?
where the hell's Andy? Wait a minute. Oh, there he is. Okay.
There we go.
Now Andy is the male twin, right?
The male
they're-
twin, the
they're-
male witch hunter.
Yeah, no, they're actually not twins. I think they're just brother or sister.
Maybe so.
But yes, what do you got to say
Man.
about Andy?
I think every time he was ever on screen, I enjoyed him.
He's a cool character. He gets his own interlude, which was really cool. And
Yeah.
while it is technically like the brother sister interlude, it's really all about him. Well, it's from his perspective. I like the portion where he goes into kind of like the annoyance of like keeping up these journals, but then also like he gets into it, and these journals give us an insight on his life. And I also like the part where when Blake disappears, some of the journal pages just magically fly out a window. I was like, why did that happen? But I'm like, oh, that's why that happened. Because
Man, and his entire dynamic with his sister Ava is just, I don't know, they're so fun to watch talk to each other because, like, Mags goes and visits their home, and Andy's not home, Ava is, and Ava's like threatening her and doing all this stuff, which, like, I assume is their standard protocol because practitioners are dangerous. And then Andy gets home and he's like, what are you doing? Like, no, put the crossbow down. It's like, come on.
yeah, he's definitely keeping his sister on a leash, which we can do the sister right after.
Oh yeah.
Ava, right? Yeah. But yeah, one of the hypest things around this part of the story, where we're kind of covering Andy's interlude, is at the end of the interlude, he like starts thinking about this rocket launcher that he got from like one of his witch hunting like kind of teachers or mentors, and he's just thinking about the day that he's gonna let it loose. It's just like, what a nice Chekhov's gun. That
Yeah.
I actually forget how the rocket launcher was. He did not blow up everyone in the church
Not in the church, but he did shoot a rocket launcher blast at some point, I think.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't quite for like the stress release revenge that I think he had in mind when he's introducing
Yeah.
that concept to us. But I think it was just like a way to beat one of the endless enemies that they're facing in the end. As far as Ava, I think it's interesting. She comes off as like annoying and reckless, but also she is so protective over her brother during the invasion of the house.
Oh man, she'll do anything for that boy.
Also, she has a pretty cool fight in the story where
Fuck yeah.
where they're doing the Home Alone, and I mostly remember all the Thorburns kind of help, they're all involved in like sneaking out, but like really it's Peter and Blake that I feel like are doing a lot of the fighting here, and particularly the part where Peter floods the location to be able to allow Blake to slow down Eva. It's very memorable. So she's got
Yeah.
memorable fights. Another memorable scene from her is during the big library fight, how she's being just a little shit and not helping. She's just kind of like in the upper floor of the library, looking down at everyone fight for their lives.
Dude, she kicked some fucking ass. Even at the end there, she was like 1v1ing a demon for a moment. And I feel like with hand-to-hand combat, this is where Wildbow got way better with just describing and choreographing it from Worm. Because, with Taylor, it's always, I swung my baton and hit him in the knee.
Mm-hmm.
But with Ava, he's describing like very specific techniques she's doing. So I can imagine this kick. And then it's always like, well, with the momentum she already had, she was going to have to drop her machete anyway, but it was actually easier for her to toss it to her ally. And I'm just like, I don't know. Imagining her doing these things, I'm just like, she kicks so much ass.
Yeah, the physicality is very cool, and we'll talk more about the fighting in Pact. But I think I want to introduce the idea that I really appreciate Pact for having short, fast-paced fight sequences. I feel like Worm kind of got bogged down in a lot of fight sequences that ended up being like, even once I got acclimated to Worm, I think the frequency and length of fights was a takeaway that like was with me till the end of the story. But I think the fights in Pact are they're either like stand battles where it's all like weird interactions of abilities and powers, or they're nice short bursts of action.
Yeah, and it's like
appreciate that.
in Pact, I feel like each chapter will like introduce, follow, and resolve a fight. And now each encounter could have multiple fights. Like this one encounter could last like a whole arc, but like I feel like within that encounter there's like distinct fights. Like it could be against the same person at a different location or same
Yeah.
location against different people.
Yeah, even during duress, where they're protecting the library, I feel like it was only like 3 or 4 chapters of them actually in the library before they had to retreat to the abyss.
Yeah.
So, with all that being said, where are we placing these two?
Man, wherever they go, I love both of them. I think Ava might go just a tad above Andy for me.
Really, I actually, in my mind, I had
I don't know.
Andy slightly above Ava.
I think Andy is a better written character because you
Yeah.
don't. There's not really a lot of subtlety to
But Ava's the more fun one, and she makes
She's just
she makes for a fun
entertaining as shit.
antagonist too, right?
Because
Yeah.
man, there was like an arc and a half there when they were at Hillsglade House where she was kind of the biggest threat on the board for a lot of the characters. Like whether because she flip flopped from being against the Thorburns to being against others like a couple times during that arc, and it was just like anytime she walked into any room and someone saw the witch hunter, they were like, "Shit."
Yeah. She big boogeyman vibes. Not
know what?
bogeyman, boogeyman. So the
You know
question
what?
is, what
They're
tier?
brother sister. Let's keep them together. I'd be cool
Definitely.
putting Andy on top.
I'll let you give Ava on top.
Yeah,
As
but
the-
I think they stay together in a comfy B. B. B.
That's the thing. I'm looking at this tier list. Do we have the right amount of tiers? I think we
know.
do. Like,
I think we do.
at worst, we have like a B plus, B minus, because I don't think there's many D's in the story.
We'll see how it goes.
We'll reevaluate from here.
We'll
on.
reevaluate. All right. We got.
How do we go from here? We could do Alexis.
Yeah, fuck it.
We can go. Yeah, whatever. We'll do our ping pong like beginning to end while skipping the main
Yeah.
characters.
All right, what you think?
So Alexis, man, this character is pretty interesting. She gets brought into the Cabal, but I think her betrayal is the one that hurts the most. And
Oh man, yeah.
as I recall, she just kind of dies in the middle of like one of the big fights, and we just find out like the next chapter that she's been dead for like a couple of scenes now.
Yeah. And like once Blake first feels that feeling of betrayal, he mentions it like almost once per chapter until her death.
Yeah, like she's the one who got to him. I distinctly remember scenes where Bogeyman Blake is trying to connect with Alexis again, and like he can't really connect with her in the same way that he's able to kind of get Tiffany and Ty sort of back on his side. With Alexis, like there's such a gap, and it's so interesting because Alexis is the kind of savior character where she takes weaker people and kind of brings them back up. As I don't know what that really says about her. Like it's partially because she has a big heart, but I also feel like it's some form of like, I don't know, therapy for herself or something that she does to make herself feel better.
Yeah. And there are some questions like that we might never get answers to, but that's okay because at the end of the day, I think most of the stuff I like best about Alexis is what she does for Blake's character.
Yeah,
So
which I think gives her a lot of points in what she brings to the story. But yeah, like scenes of them talking while Blake is in the mirror, and like Blake can't really tell if he's getting through to her, and she's giving sort of non-committal answers that keep him with enough hope, but like also crush him. And then like you find out that pretty much since Blake came back, they just been pretending to be on his side or pretending to be his friends, but they're still very strictly sided with Rose. Which, I mean, that's such an interesting part of the story because we know that they're really Blake's friends, but you can't fault any of these characters for how they treat Blake. It's so frustrating, and like you just can't fault them.
God.
It's
So now, where does she go though?
she's pretty. I think she's pretty interesting. And among the Cabal, I think she's one of the more interesting ones. I'd hazard a high B, low A.
I was gonna go high B.
We can go high B. We can be
We'll
conservative
go high
here.
B. Yeah, I mean that's good.
I might push for low A later, but
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah,
I mean,
B
hey.
might get filled up fast.
we actually have a lot of Cabal characters back to back because we can also do Tiffany
Yeah, hold on.
and Tyler.
Let's do the Cabal. Let's do the Cabal.
If we're gonna do the whole Cabal,
And
that's
then,
it, right?
that's about it. I think that's about it.
Yeah. So Tiffany is she lived till the end, right? But she gets sidelined in the last arc.
Yeah, and
As I recall, Tiffany and Tyler are left behind after the big church, like where they're hauled up in the church. They escape using Evan, and then I kind of remember how they just kind of fall off. I think they just retreat while the final party goes to fight Barbatorum and Johannes and such.
man, and I feel really guilty because I know there was a moment in those last few arcs where Tiff kind of did have a moment of like kind of reevaluating herself and who she is because you know, I think she was like relatively new to their friend group, right?
Yeah, so she was brought on as like Alexis's new bird under her wing.
Yeah, and I think like in a sense magic actually kind of helped her find her place a little bit.
Definitely.
I don't know if I'm off the mark, but she was cool. She didn't end up being like as huge to Blake as I thought she was going to be when they were introduced and they went on their date. But that's totally fine.
I thought that was a cool
because-
introduction I thought that was a cool chapter too because they get attacked I think by some fairies as I recall, and Blake has kind of like handles the situation with someone who's unawakened. And, they were gonna have a threesome with Alexis, so that's always a fun part of this story where it's like, yeah, these are grown up people who are sex positive, except for Blake, who has this weird relationship.
You know what? She's actually just super necessary to the story because when Blake came back from the abyss and he had no ties to the world aside from like maybe Evan, he was like, no, you know what? Like once Blake knew what he was, he was like, Tiffany is
The one
a
real friend.
actual. She's a real friend. She's not one that was made for me or is left over from some past person. Like that is a friend I made since I came into existence.
She also
and that
has
really helped him.
she has some cool scenes of competence in combat during both the library sequence and when they're fighting just all the demons as soon as like when they're in the library. So hold on, there's the actual library where they fight during duress, but then I think that part of the abyss that they go to in arc 15 is also the library. So she's in both sequences anyways, but I remember her like it was either her or Alexis using like shooting lightning bolts out of pipes or like throwing boards and shit. It was cool. It was she definitely grew up in magic and caught on very quickly. Like I remember being impressed multiple times by specifically Tiffany showing feats of understanding magic even though she's really new to the practice. So I feel like she would go right here.
I could put her there. Definitely below Alexis. But
And then Tyler's interesting because the way Blake introduces Tyler, it seems like he's a sort of a wishy-washy friend who just moves on from interest to interest, but like he's also a total bro throughout the story, and I never really felt like he did anything to make me feel like I don't know, because Blake almost describes him in a way that's less flattering than the others. I don't know if you'd agree.
I think so because he does admire like how enthused Tyler gets with the things he has, but
Hmm.
I think Blake is someone who values expertise at something you commit your heart to.
Yeah.
And Tyler might not necessarily have that. And one
I,
fear I think Blake had whenever Tyler was going to be awakened was that,
yeah.
magic kind of rewards picking a discipline and sticking to it, like being a chronomancer, being a diabolist, whatever. And he's like, I don't feel like Tyler's ever going to like nail down a specialty. And my I kind of had a gut feeling for how Tyler's abilities would play out in the story, and I don't know if other people noticed the trend. I feel like I was kind of on the mark because I feel like whenever the Cabal did pitch in ideas or things to potentially help, Tyler actually would have ideas quite often.
Hmm.
And we see him use a wide like array of different types of practice and techniques, like the little origami thingies.
Oh
But
yeah, God.
also, I think his ideas fail quite often. Like those very same things. He's like, oh, they should have worked. They didn't.
That's a
Uh,
really interesting point. See, this is why this is such a good story to reread or
yeah.
re-listen. I've already like re-listened to arcs 1 and 2 and have been blown away at like some of the stuff that's set up early that just went over my head. But that's cool. I gotta watch out for stuff like that. I feel like he always pitches an idea and is often rebutted by Rose or whoever is more intelligent in the room, but he's always trying. I can't remember if he
Yeah.
has like if he ever has an idea where it's like, wow, Tyler really got us out of that situation. But there probably is a moment like that.
Yeah, but
His
he's
relationship,
cool.
his relationship with Evan, I think, is also really worth mentioning because he kind of fills in the role that Evan had with Blake for a little bit there, and I really like the scene where they're playing cards in the mirror, and like
Oh
Tyler,
man.
Tyler comes off as sympathetic to Blake's plight, even though he has no actual emotion towards Blake.
Yeah.
So again, they are not truly Blake's friends, which crushes Blake, but it's very understandable in the end.
And I think probably the last one of the last big conversations Ty has in the story is about how culpable Blake is for his friend's
Yeah.
involvement in the practice because
Oh.
I think near the end they actually like Blake actually does get finally called out on something he knew he eventually would, like you're morally responsible for bringing Tiff and Ty into this hell world.
That's a good point.
uh but Tyler actually sticks up for Blake. He's like, you know what, I obviously don't hold anything against him because I don't remember it. Maybe he did, but I don't feel anything. So if I don't feel any resentment, where how is he guilty?
Yeah,
Some
I
shit like
remember
that.
him bringing that up in an argument as like a way to get Blake to comply or like make a concession to whatever crazy demand he had at the time. Man, I think he's also another B tier character, right? But I, it's kind of tough. I between the three of the Cabals.
Could put him. I would put him below the Witch Hunters just because I fucking love them. But I also love Ty. But
Man, the
I
witch
don't know.
hunters being non-magic users that just use like artifacts and can lie is a
Yeah.
interesting point too. Where like they're the only characters that can bring that to the story, aside from the Blackguards in like the main party, which is Peter. uh, and we'll get to Peter.
Oh my god.
So this would be the Astrologer. Who,
Yeah.
you know what? Really cool character. Not in the story for very long, but very welcoming to the gang when we do meet her, which I believe
Yeah.
is that arc 4 when we first meet her. I think
Some
so.
shit like that. Yeah, I think the first arc in
In Toronto,
Toronto, which the Toronto arc, boy.
Toronto arc.
Dude, her summons are fucking rad.
I like her office of a bunch of technology and was the story that so she had a master. And what happened to that master again? Because I remember it being really fascinating, but I don't remember the specific.
Oh man, all I know is he died, and
It
at the
let.
end
Oh
when the
yeah.
demons are bringing back images of everyone's lost loved ones, I think she was the one who was closest to cracking.
Yes, definitely. Diana Thompson. Trying to see if I can find it real quick.
She deserves it.
Yeah, either way, there was like she's really nice to Blake. I remember her like being very welcoming in their home, like giving him some respite because things slowed down very infrequently in Pact. So things like that really stick out to me, and her whole setup of having like all the machines in her lair. The thing is, she doesn't get to do much in this story, but she's memorable in the chapter she is there.
I might put her in C just like by fault of, screen time.
Yeah, but like I'd say I
Cool,
don't
though.
know if many people in C will be below her at the very
Yeah,
least.
high C. Or, I don't know.
I don't remember who the Tallow Man is. That's definitely
Dude,
one of the
so
others.
the Tallow Man was one of the first boogeymen they summoned in Toronto, and his whole deal was he was like a candle maker when he was alive.
This
and
guy, yeah, he
there were
patches
some
up
people who
Blake.
yeah, he would like murder people, tried to like murder him, and he would fill the holes with wax. And that kept happening until like more of his body was wax than flesh, and then he was like all wax, and then he was a boogeyman.
Ooh, I like how when Blake does get fixed up from I think it was Isadora at that time. That out of
Yeah.
the many people who almost killed Blake, I think that time it was Isadora, and he feels the wax within himself and gets a little worried because I think the whole thing with the Tallow Man, as I recall, is like if he fixes you with wax, you will also eventually be like him, where you're more wax than person.
Yeah.
Oh,
So scary.
that's such a good foreshadowing for Blake becoming more tree than like that is a concern
Yeah.
that became very true later in a different way.
That's when we kind of started planning the idea of like becoming more other than you are your original human.
Yeah, it had been a threat. I think this is in Arc 6 where that kind of stuff is happening. It had been a threat up to that story, up to that point of the story, but it was becoming more and more real. And then Arc 9 just shows up and woo, you know how it goes.
You know how that should go.
So this is a cool bogeyman, but it's also the bogeymen, with the exception of maybe two of them, are really just there to
Shout outs to JP.
yeah, shout outs to JP to kind of flesh out the story or like give him a higher arsenal. So like I can't in good conscience put him any higher than C. Now do the bogeymen go to D though? That feels a little unfair because he's cool and interesting.
So here's the thing. Scroll down, look at the list of characters.
Let's see.
You know what? Put him in C. Because I just wanted to make sure there actually is at least a character I could put in D.
All right, we're gonna skip Barbatorum,
Dude.
and we'll throw him here somewhere in the middle so we get to him later. I guess we could do
What
Conquest then.
Look at that shit-eating grin. Look at it. Man,
Conquest is like our second major antagonist of this story. Very
he leaves
memorable.
such an impression. Blake's first time walking into his domain and seeing him, I'm like, Blake is out of his fucking league.
Yeah,
Like,
he's huge too, right? It's hard to tell from this
Yeah.
picture, but like, a cool thing about Conquest is that because he's a spirit of conquest of like Canada, he doesn't really have that much bite to his bark, which is like
kind of funny.
self-deprecating joke, I guess, by Wildbow here. But I thought that was pretty interesting because that's also his major flaw is that, as I recall in those times, it becomes a concept of he's not actually as strong as he makes him out to be, so we can exhaust his power sources, or we can actually kind of fight him for a little bit despite him being an incarnation, which is just a cool concept in general, is these incarnations.
And what elevates him for me is his return later in the story.
Yeah.
Like, when Blake, for the very first time, wakes up as this dual being spirit inside Rose's body and hears Conquest's laugh, I was like, oh shit. And at that moment, I was like, oh my god, it's Blake's nemesis. Like,
It's so cool that like Rose keeps drawing on power from Conquest, which is a beat we touch on so many times throughout the story. So when we finally get into Rose, it's like Conquest is in there as an antagonizing force, and there's a bit of an ebb and flow with Conquest letting Blake influence Rose and then inhibiting his influence of Rose so he can have influence. and it just becomes a very interesting story at that point because of their uh, take and give between each other, their combat that they're kind of having within Rose. But also, I feel like he just kind of near the end of the story stops being as relevant, despite still being in the body. I don't remember if they addressed that, but he kind of lets Blake have more impact and only comes out every once in a while, just like in a helpful way almost. Maybe it's a survival thing because I don't remember, but if Rose dies, maybe the remaining like what exists of Conquest will also die. So maybe he had the interest to help her out.
All I know is he gave us like one of the coolest arcs in Pact, which was the fucking contest arc.
Yeah,
Like when he and Blake propose their game to each other and they're gonna pick champions, I was like, Pact is so fucking cool.
yeah, it was really cool, and I like how the fight in the snow outside of like Duncan's house. It sticks out to me because of like there's this portion where Blake is trapped between like a car and a bank of snow, and Conquest is like circling around with this giant musket that shoots like big bullets. I forget how the fuck he got out of there too. I genuinely can't remember. Can't wait to reread the story, to be honest.
Hear me out. I'm gonna make a case for low A.
Ooh.
I love this motherfucker when he on screen.
I mean, as an antagonist, he's great. He's also kind of one note, but by design, he has to be.
He's just an intimidating motherfucker.
Yeah, I can live with that. And I would say
there's gonna be a lot of people above him. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. The Shepherd is cool, but also has low screen time, right? He's one of those characters.
There's not like a ton going on there. He's cool in the fight that we fight him.
He's just one of the villains of the week, though he doesn't get hit like his arc, but he shows up in the big fights.
I'd even put him below Tallow Man, just because like Tallow Man at least like introduces some of those concepts we talked about for Blake.
Let me bring up three cool things about the Shepherd that may paint your picture. One,
I want to join the Shepherd fan club.
I wouldn't say it's a fan club. We're just shooting shit here. Yeah. One is his relationship with Evan and how he kind of threatens to harvest Evan's soul, or it was either that or Evan being mad that he didn't handle the Hyena situation. And now I can't remember which one it was. But there's friction between him and Evan that gave Evan a little bit more to do outside of like the main party. It gave him a vested interest with one of the antagonists, which was cool. A second part of it is the scene where, like, I think his major action scene is when Blake's on the bike, and I think the Eye of Toronto is doing his stormy fire bullshit, but then they're also getting swarmed by ghosts, and Blake has to, like, ride his bike like a knight through the swarm of ghosts. I thought that was, like, a really memorable, badass scene.
Man, that was a badass scene.
Yeah, and Evan's, like, cutting through the ghost. It's, like, one of the early instances of Evan showing his, like, pathfinding powers, like, where he's, like, splitting the sea of ghosts as they're flying by. That's so cool.
Man, what a guy.
What a guy. And then lastly is when they bring back the remnants, and there's a couple of chapters where we do like a very brief part of one of the interludes right after Blake disappears, where we get some of the Shepherd's mind. And he seems like he's deeply tormented or regretful about something in his life. So when they bring out the fake remnants at the end there, I think it's Miss Lewis that does that, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, or one of her demons? Anyway, someone among the lawyer crew brings back everyone's, like, loved ones. The Shepherd just lets himself instantly get eaten by those spirits, like, some sort of, like, he's so overwhelmed by seeing them again that he's like, I need to repent by letting them just kill me, because I can't deal with this pain.
Yo, when is the Shepherd spin-off?
Never. Now, all that aside, I'll let you decide if that puts him above or below Tallow Man.
I think still below.
I tried Shepherd, but I am fighting for this guy. Do we do Green Eyes now?
Nah, get that shit out of here. Come on.
Yeah, Katherine Thorburn, the fucking goat. This is the one who's a mother and just kind of lets herself get killed in the end, right?
I think whenever they were trying to ascend to the library to get out, she like grabbed a book off the shelf at like, I don't know. I think everyone advised her not to, and she was looking at it, and it was like reading all of her actual regrets in life on the
Oh my
pages,
god.
and then it like predicted her death seconds before it happened or something.
We gotta find a time and talk about some of the locations and world building concepts. And I mean, maybe we'll do it more when we get to the main characters, but like the library is so fucking cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, that just mentally broke her. It's just like, go on without me, I'll catch up. And everyone's like, she will not catch up. But let's
And
go.
I feel really guilty that I didn't pay more attention to her and, why she was chosen to die when she did and stuff like that because honestly, I was focused on all of the other Thorburns present who are
I,
also phenomenal.
I
So
think
I
what's
spent less.
important about Catherine is that she had the most to lose because she has a
Yeah,
family,
yeah, you know what?
and she was the most human among them. Where she didn't have the young spunk of someone like Roxanne or Peter or Paige, so she's brought into this world and she really does not thrive in it. She barely contributes, and she gets horrified when they go into the tenements.
Yeah.
And then she just gets bodied in arc 15. So,
Yeah.
like she has a very important function, I think, in the story. There's just not much to her, so I'd say she's C tier,
Yeah.
and I'd put her
Yeah.
above the Bogeyman.
Yeah, fuck it.
Fuck
She's
it.
a Thorburn.
Yeah, we're not doing Maggie quite yet either.
Oh, you gotta save my girl.
So like, we can do Roxanne. Speaking of
Yes, fuck it.
Thorburns,
Man. Oh, dude, Roxanne was like fucking killing me when oh man, I'm trying to remember exactly what happened. It made me laugh my ass off. Where uh, she was like begging Ava, like, don't tase me," and Ava just like kicks her in the stomach.
yeah, I think she kicks her in the jaw or something too at some point. I like
Yeah,
seeing Roxanne get her shit kicked in. Tbh, she's such
but
a little. She's like. It's like the Thorburns are being born more and more evil, and like she's like the bottom of that ladder. Where several times throughout the story, people are worried about the kind of practitioner she would be when she's awakened, and they should be because she's pretty scary mindset wise.
yeah, and it's really interesting how over the course of her appearances, I get a little bit more scared of her over time because at first I'm like, oh, she's just a brat who knows what she can and can't get away with. And then, there's the thing where she tried to stab Ava, and I was like, oh, okay, so this is like a girl who might actually have like some issues. I could see her totally going to juvie. And then later on, whenever we find out she has even more weapons we didn't know about, and she was one of the only people not affected at all by the demon, kind of like Ava, I was like, okay, there's something like probably actually genuinely
Well, yeah,
psychologically
wait.
wrong with Roxanne.
What was the deal? Like that demon. What was that demon's power again?
Basically, I can't remember which choir it was from,
Yeah, it's hard to
but
keep track.
essentially, the more grounded in reality and
Yes.
like stable your mind is, the more it affected you. So like Ava and Roxanne weren't affected at all. Peter was like kind of half affected, half not, and the normal people or more normal
Uh,
people like Rose were like,
dude, I think she's low B then. She's fun. She's a fun addition.
yeah, yeah, let's go.
The thing is, when stuff starts hitting the fan, with the Thorburn house, do you remember like a cool moment from her?
Um. I think it was
I
just kind of
remember.
cool that she was down to help out with their little Home Alone, let's kill the witch hunters deal.
Yeah, but she
Uh,
also had no choice.
Dude, no, you know what? Fucking one of the hardest scenes to read in me for the book was from her, where they're at the tenements and she's like holding on to a beam with like one hand,
Yeah.
and it like if she drops, she will fall into oblivion. And then there's like bugs crawling in and out of her skins, and
Oh yeah. Oh, that part.
And she's like, I can't let go, but there's bugs crawling out of my skin. And they're like, it's not real. Like, it's playing tricks on your mind. And, like, there's blood dripping down her, and, like, the holes are obviously real. And it's like, ah!
Christ.
That was hard to read.
Definitely B, but where in B? I don't know if she goes above the Cabal or Andy.
I could put her either below or above Tyler. Maybe below,
I'll
just because
push
Tyler
for
is, like,
Tyler is a good friend where he can be. We could hold off Miss Lewis for a little bit too.
Yeah, hold her off, hold her
and
off.
definitely Rose Senior.
yeah, oh, yeah.
Who the hell's Pris?
Who the fuck? Hold on. Google.
Yeah, hit me up here. Meanwhile,
Google.
we
I type
gotta
Google into Google.
at some point we gotta take some time to talk about the. Well, we talked about the magic system impact, but we should talk about anything that's introduced
Oh.
about it near the end.
Okay, hold on. No, Pris is alright. Pris was the blackguard of the Knights.
Yeah. Oh
Um,
man, the knights
so
are.
she's the girl who doesn't remember that she saved Blake in the police station.
Oh my god. Yeah. Man, I really like when the Knights come back and Blake is like, "Holy shit, it's the Knights!" I'm like, they're so cool. Like Blake is such a fan of the Knights near the end of the story because
No.
they're the few people that he could still respect, and I
When
think
they
they're a
show
cool
up, it's
concept.
like the fucking Knights.
Yo, it's the fucking, and then I think they serve as a lot of fodder there for Mara to kill and then the barber to
Yeah.
kill. Do the Knights make it out of the story? I know
Some of
several of them die. Yeah.
I think some of them do. Pris, I remember there was one moment where I think it might have been when they were riding to the factory. No, I think when they were riding away from the factory.
Holy shit, the fact.
When they first fought her or whatever, but there were a bunch of people in the car, and like Blake was talking to both Evan and Rose in the mirror, and of course Pris can hear neither of them, and she's like, "This is so fucking weird."
Yeah, man. That's yeah. The whole Knights in general is such a cool concept where
Yeah.
they dabble in magic kind of almost hobbyish to where they don't have to go too deep into the practice. And it makes them weaker, but they have numbers and they know what they
Yeah.
can or can't handle.
And they ride or die, man.
They
and
ride or
they
die.
do die.
Oh boy.
Boy, do they.
I think she goes above Catherine, but probably not
Yeah.
above the Astrologer.
Yeah, let's go.
Hell no, we ain't doing Evan.
Oh my
We're
god!
not doing Blake. We're not doing
No!
Rose. We're okay. Let's do the hyena. That's a D tier character, right? That's not really a. It's a monster. The hyena's cunning and mean, and then is just a tool. And I don't know if it says something about Blake. Like we can try to sit here and talk about what the hyena being Blake's implement means because Blake never gets a demens. And he gets a familiar and an implement, so he doesn't even like complete the full trifecta of being a practitioner. But
Yeah. That's the thing, is like obviously it's a D tier character because it's the fucking hyena. But I think as like an item,
yeah,
I would make it like a B or an A tier item. I think it's really cool because whenever Blake first gets this thing, I immediately kind of just enjoyed like what it means like to bind like a goblin as a sword, because its very existence is that it's spiting Blake. It's like you're gonna have to stab yourself in the hand every single time you ever want to use me.
though it's cool because I think near the end that stops being like really an issue. It just doesn't come up very often, like or that
Yeah.
like either it's not hurting Blake or yeah,
More of a part of him even.
yeah, which is really he can resummon it like a keyblade. The component of it where it gives you grievous wounds where you can't really heal them fast, or it can just like kill almost unkillable things is a cool mechanic because it's a very minor power that it gets a lot of mileage out in the story.
And I think its actually finest moment is in arcs. I believe in the arc into 14, whenever they're finally about to leave the abyss and get back to Jacob's Bell, and you know, the abyss tries to offer Blake his position as a gatekeeper, and like the thing it shows him to signify this is the hyena. It's like, hey, here is your weapon back. Like I think this weapon is so just tied to Blake at that point.
Much to his dismay, because as soon as he
Yeah.
binds the hyena, he's like, "This could be my implement," but and then like, it never formalizes as an implement. It just kind of happens over time. As
It really does.
Yeah, which is pretty cool.
And I think whenever implements are first ever even kind of discussed, you know, it talks about stuff people might not consider when choosing their implement that you should, because like, you know, choosing a sword as your implement is basically telling people your identity is fighting, and like you're probably going to fight to the grave. And you know, it ends up kind of being that pseudo implement for Blake, and throughout the entire story he's the warrior, he's the scrapper.
Yeah, yeah. They kind of mention all those weaknesses about picking the sword, and then you realize that they're kind of fitting for Blake. But yeah, like sure, it's an item, but I think it'll still
Yeah,
get.
I don't know where we put it.
Worst case scenario, it's the highest in D because it's very important to the
Yeah,
story
I
in a
mean,
way.
let's
Man,
see what else we got.
let's do Paws next.
Dude, I thought he was cool. I thought he was cool, man.
Was he? What's cool about Paws?
I really loved his fight because
He summons a bunch of like dogs and like feral
well, that's
animals,
the thing.
right?
I call it a fight. I'm more talking about like him negotiating
Yeah.
that deal with Blake. It's the first time we get to see Blake like do any diabolism. And it really feels like a fight because over the course of that chapter, Blake reads through the contract so many times and is like, oh my God, like if this line is interpreted this way, he would actually be able to do this in the future after all this is over, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, that was very needed in the story to have a scene like that.
And like, Paws is doing this very effortlessly, and it just gives me the idea that like, oh my God, dealing with demons must be the most horrifying shit ever. And it's so good because this entire chapter, Blake was fighting to get Paws to agree, hey, as soon as you're bound, you can't use your powers anymore. And Paws eventually agrees. But it turns out agreeing to that was terrible for Blake because Paws gets bound and then he fucking grins like an idiot. And Blake's like, wait, he doesn't get to use his powers anymore. And his powers are what were keeping the animals from killing Blake.
Yeah, that was even with all the side steps that Blake did to not fuck himself over in that like they're just smarter than him. Like Blake did pretty good, but he couldn't be perfect in that negotiation, which I think is fair for how new he is to the practice.
And no, and then
I like when
Paws had another great moment.
I like when he's trapped with Laird in the circles.
Dude, that's some shit right there. That was the moment like even other characters in the story were like, okay, man, Blake, this is a little fucked up. Like,
wasn't it Rose's idea? Maybe. I don't recall.
But I think another moment I really liked with Paws is someone says pig Latin around Paws, and he's like, I'm familiar in 24 human tongues, but this one escapes me.
Man, okay, but where does that really put him? I feel like he adds to the story, but he's not the most interesting. Like, he is what he is. He's a little monster who does some clever things.
I was gonna say like Lobie.
Okay, maybe here.
Yeah,
above Roxanne.
Yeah, fuck it.
Man, let's talk about our first S tier.
Yeah, S tier.
Peter's
Holy
so
shit.
good.
From day one, I always knew. Oh,
he's the asshole you hate to love, dude. He's such a good character.
God, and like he's one of the ones I've been thinking about more and more since the story ended because for each character, I want to ask myself, do they have an arc and what is it? And Peter, like, it's a subtle arc, but it's an arc nonetheless, and I think
definitely.
It's really cool.
Yeah, like, man, there's so much to talk about Peter. Like the whole when he finds out about this world. It's like, oh, you can't lie and there's karma? I might be in danger. And that kind of explains his whole character going into this. Like, he knows that he's a shit, and he knows how to game the system and what limits to push. And, like, he has a shitty family who pits them, like, all the siblings and cousins against each other. All the aunts and uncles are each other's throats. So he's kind of grifter, like a con man by birth. And
yeah.
It's just cool because over the story he kind of softens up. He's more genuine. He uses the negative things that were taught to him. He uses them in a positive light to help out the crew. He gets a big moment near the end, freeing Faisal. How is this motherfucker alive?
Dude, he's kind of man. I forgot he freed Faisal. What a fucking goat!
He's like almost bloody on the ground, and he gets like knocked down, and then Barbatorium's distracted that he just runs over and frees Faisal, which is huge.
Peter's really fantastic, and just like to talk about it, he as soon as he finds out karma is a real thing, he's like, I'm fucked. But even after learning karma is a real thing, he doesn't immediately start adjusting his behavior. He's actually still kind of an asshole for a while. And I feel like where that really starts to turn is when he starts making connections with these people, particularly Ainsley.
I was going to mention his relationship with Ainsley. I think it's cute.
And because that's the first time we see him ever do anything not assholeless to anybody, is hang out with her. But only after having these moments with Ainsley does he start turning that towards other characters. Like, for example, when the Sphinx is hurt, he tells Paige, like, sorry, your pussy got hurt, and everyone's like, oh, fucking dick. And you know
He's like,
Blake kind of notes how he looks introspective for a second. He's like, no, like, genuinely, no, like, really, I feel bad.
like,
I don't know what to call it.
his love language, or his language in general, is to be snarky and mean,
Yeah.
but he really starts showing some genuine emotion. And Paige is his sister, and they clearly have like a fractured relationship, but it was just really cool to see that side of him.
Yeah.
Man, he's such a badass during Duress, Arc 12, man.
He's a genius, dude. He's so
I started getting the sense that like Peter was the true heir, but that Rose overlooked, because he's so good at this, despite not even being magical. He doesn't have any magic. He just knows how to play the situation.
When he started flooding the house so Blake would be able to go anywhere, me
Genuinely
and Blake
the
had like
turning
the
point.
same thought at the same time. Like, you fucking brilliant bastard.
Brilliant bastard is the best way to describe Peter. He's also part of one of my favorite action scenes, which later on we're going to take an interlude and talk about the Abyss, the best fights, the best powers, and anything that kind of fits into the magic system, and some side stuff that may not relate to certain characters. We'll do like a little quickie. But one of my favorite scenes in the story, Barbatorum creates a bunch of shears and kills like a bunch of others, right? And I was like, how come the shear stopped? But that was because it was setting the precedent for the real attack, where it reminds me of fighting Tohu and Bohu, I think were their names, from Worm.
Yeah.
Where they booby-trap everything in the surrounding, where Peter and Blake are in the middle of a bunch of converging blades, and Ainsley shatters her implement to stop time. That was so cool! And like, Peter and Blake barely make it out. That is so hype.
Can you imagine how cool that attack would look in, like, I don't know, some fucking like Russo game?
That is top 3 like scenes I want to see in a Pact.
It is so cool
adaptation. I want Pact adapted more than Worm. It's easier, but also like I think it's just Pact is so different. Worm is a superhero story that takes itself really seriously and deconstructs a lot of the elements that we take for granted. Pact is like nothing else. I think it's worth mentioning at some point of this is I think Pact is one of the most unique stories I've ever witnessed.
You know what? I want to ride off that word deconstruction, actually, because this is a thought I've had about Pact for a while. Because Worm is a superhero deconstruction, and it's not the only one, but it's pretty cool. And just to establish the term deconstruction. Well, actually, no. Worm is a reconstruction.
Yeah, I guess that's more. I think it deconstructs some themes, but in general, it's like a reconstruction.
I think the deconstruction of the superhero genre, which there's a ton of them, is kind of recognizing that if you took superpowers and put them in the real world with real people who behave realistically, you probably wouldn't end up with something that looks like the Golden Age comic books you used to read.
Yeah.
Worm is the reconstruction in that it accepts that fact, so it tries to twist the rules of superpowers so that if you gave them to realistic people acting realistically, you end up with something looking more like Golden Age comic books. Mm-hmm. And I think Pact is like a reconstruction of literature, because early on in Pact, they kind of recognize, around the time when Blake is kind of getting his tutorial fights, that people in real life don't necessarily talk like people do in movies or books. Like, language in movies and books is obviously dramatized to evoke a reaction from the audience. And so, if you took all these situations and put real people from real life in them, they might not give these dramatic speeches before they fight someone. They might just run out in the street and start swinging. This reconstructs that. It changes the rules of their universe so that realistic people acting according to their own wants and needs would act more like people in a movie or book.
Yeah.
Because they have an audience that they have to appeal to and evoke a reaction from. It's the spirits.
Point in case, like, calling out your attack name is the equivalent of Barbatorum needing to do that precedent of what an attack is so that it guarantees a strike on these people that are more powerful. I think that's really cool.
He took like literature devices and tropes and made them realistic features of the story. Like third time is literally the charm. You are more likely to succeed your third time.
That might be the
something.
best one because it's so simple and it's used so many times.
Yeah. So it's like a reconstruction of books. Oh wait, Peter.
Anyways, Peter's the GOAT.
S tier. One more. Peter had one of the funniest moments in the books when they're climbing up the tower near, like in Arc 15, to go to the final fight. And Peter sticks his head through a door and then pulls it back, and a shear like almost cut his head off. And he's like, predictable.
Yeah. Oh my god, I love this character.
Like, he's such a shit.
God, I love this story, dude. How could I go on to Pale if I just want to do this again? Oh.
No, all right, who we got?
Isadora, easy A tier contender. She's so cool.
Dude. She's there.
Cooler than Conquest IMO. She's there.
She's in this. Not only is she about as intimidating as Conquest or more, she's also there for just like kind of everything. She's there for a lot of the big plot reveals, like that. For example, Rose is going to replace Blake when he dies.
Yeah,
he's the first one to like, I think, convincingly tell the reader, yes, Blake is going to die. Like, people imply it, but she's like, no.
Yeah, when she says it hit different, didn't it?
Because that was the moment I had to accept, like, okay, Blake is going to die. I don't know what that means. I don't know what his afterlife is going to look like, but I feel like I just have to accept he's going to die in this story.
And I like how Ty is big horny for her. She's got that weird relationship with Paige where, like, no, sure, like, we have like a, what's it called? A familiar relationship, but I'm the boss here. I'm the mommy.
She's like, no, you got it twisted. I'm not the one who's going to be more like the familiar here.
But like her gimmick of getting angry people answer her questions wrong, and how she drops it near the end where it's like, no, things are too serious right now.
Yeah, she asks Rose that question. She's like, you don't gotta worry about it tonight. You're good.
She gets killed in the end. I forget by which demon.
No, and that was so
kind of
sad.
Devastating for Paige. Rip pussy.
Dude, I think she also does maybe one of the most devastating attacks against Blake in the whole story. He was out for days.
Dude, that was like, Blake had gone through a lot, but that was the heaviest blow he had taken, where in Arc 6, that's the end of the Conquest fight, actually, as I recall.
You know what, though?
No, it's not. No, it's the end of,
because,
like, the first Conquest fight where, like, getting stormed by the ghost and stuff, and the bike scene. She just swipes his fucking chest off.
He's out for a few days, and then as soon as he wakes up, they're like, hey, we were able to put off the fight with Conquest for 3 days. So the fight's here.
Yep.
But,
right on time.
No, her attacking Blake like that was even cooler because later on you find out essentially her plan there was to cripple Blake, get him almost dead, because Conquest was on the way. And her idea was like, oh, if someone else who isn't on Conquest's side, like, crippled Blake like that, if Conquest tried to come in and finish Blake off, his victory wouldn't actually be earned. So her idea was like to, I don't know, do that to Blake so Blake could leave and recover and his side could have more time to prepare.
Here's where Pact, and I mean, it's still my favorite book and like my favorite Wild Bow right now. Not by too much. Worm's still fantastic.
Oh yeah.
But like, here's where Pact gets a little wibbly wobbly because her being on his side, sure, he didn't get the killing blow, but it's still someone in his army getting, like, that's saying like a general in her army doesn't get the glory for the battle. So it's a little, either way, what is cool also about her is that she's trying to recycle Blake's being in the kindest way she can because she sees through the whole facade of the Vestige. So she's like, if I kill you, it's probably the most karmically rich. It's probably the least, like, connection heavy. Because she has this weird power of being able to kind of purify you as you die, sort of thing. I think that's how it's implied to work. That's pretty neat as well.
Yeah, I got the feeling she's one of the few characters, aside from the lawyers, with, like, what I would call karma sense. She can just, like, kind of tell what your karma is, I guess.
Cool. So we're about an hour in. We're a little under half. I don't know who Zoe's Artana is.
Yeah, so this is the witch from the drains.
Oh, wait. She's
Cool,
She's
man.
pretty memorable. She has like a code of honor. She sticks to it, but also like aside from Green Eyes, actually I did not trust Green Eyes at first at all. She's like the one person who gives you a breather in those drains.
Yeah, she's the only person we saw down there living comfortably. Like she had the house that she lived in herself. She had like
A radio even.
she had like a radio and a blanket.
Oh, she got a nice sweater at the end.
And
from Blake.
she was actually even really nice to Blake because she's like, you don't have to, everyone says you have to give me a gift. You don't have to give me a gift. It's just a token. And of course, Blake being Blake, he's like, no,
God.
I'm gonna do it anyway. And I think like he gives her his jacket, and she actually gives it back on his way out. She's like, no, really, like,
The jacket becomes part of his like default costume, which starts becoming a thing because he's not even a
Oh,
person,
yeah.
so he's got a default costume.
And then I just
cool-
remember with her name reveal, I think Blake asks her name and she says it. He's like, "Oh my God, you're the first practitioner I've met with like actually like a wizard name."
Yeah, like Zatanna.
Yeah, he was like, "Whoa, cool name."
So, fun fact about the last chapter: Blake decides to go with the two bikers. They're headed to
Yeah.
Wisconsin. That's where her grave was.
Oh my God,
That's kind of cute. I feel like I feel like he saw it as a way to like finish the trip and pay respects to her. Or it's not her grave, but the grave of someone she cared about. One of the
yeah,
two. But
like
either
a family
way,
member or something.
that's something I
You know
only know
what?
because of Deep Impact. That's like
Can
a
we
B.
put her? Can we? I was gonna put her above. I was gonna put her above Pals, maybe.
Easy. Tyler. How about Tyler?
Yeah, fuck it. I think she's fucking cool.
She's a nice breath of fresh air too.
Yeah.
I don't remember what Penelope does. Is she the one
So-
where Blake is threatening her mom like right in front of her, and like she's the one where she takes Blake into the group chat?
No, so I think
That's
he was
Lola,
at
right? Then yeah.
I think he was at Lola's house during that. Penelope is like obviously the junior council doesn't have a leader, but she's like the leader, you know what I mean? Like she's always I think she's the admin of their group chat, and she's usually always kind of driving things. And I think her big deal is that they kind of made the junior council as their idea of like creating the new generation of practitioners and doing their approach to solving the problems that they think plague their parents' generation, like the fighting between the families. They don't want to do as much fighting.
But also Blake points out that like you're still perpetuating a lot of the traditions where you're fine, like you're not okay with the marriage thing, but you're fine with staying with those traditions, which isn't really solving the problem.
Yeah, I think her purpose in the story is to be critiqued,
Yeah.
like her solution, because at one point, either Blake or Peter actually kind of mentions like this is probably what your parents did too when they were little.
Mm-hmm.
They probably wanted to be better than their parents, but they did too little, too late. Their council didn't actually set out to change much, and they ended up the people they are. So it's like you guys can make this council and say you're going to change things, but you're not taking the drastic action. You know who takes drastic actions?
Me.
Rose Senior.
Yeah, well, Blake's taking the drastic actions at that point in
Yeah,
the story. Which,
so-
hey, Rose, that's probably part of Rose's plan at the end of the day.
So
She's not that. I think she's like high C.
I was gonna put her like right below the Astrologer.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fair. Paige, however, has a lot more going on. It's cool in the beginning, especially where rereading the first chapter, Paige and Molly and Blake still have a good relationship, and it's brought up more when we get to more Molly stuff later, which I did not think Molly would come back in the way she did, but damn.
Yeah. Oh my God. And
Uh,
I wish we got to see more of the consequences of the relationship between
yeah.
Paige and Isadora, but I do think we didn't totally leave Paige hanging. Her coming back at the end of the story and getting to see her bounce off her brother Peter a little bit, I think that really helped.
But so she was part of the final party. What did she bring? Because I remember when Rose is picking out the final party, she's trying to pick out a balance of their skill sets, but also what they represent. And I think Was Paige just representing Thorburns aside from herself? And
Maybe.
then Peter served as the blackguard. There's like a passage where they go into
There's
it.
some shit like that.
I think she gets sidelined enough to not go into A.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I could put her...
I think above Ava and Andy.
Yeah, fuck yeah. No, let's go. Like, her showing up for the first time with Isadora was like a... I think they end the chapter on that, and I was like, what the fuck?
And they come over, and Blake made a pizza, and he's like, well, there's no more fucking slices left.
Yeah.
That was funny. That was a good...
Man.
Oh, man, there's so many...
I love Blake offering people like the Shepherd and Isadora beer and microwave pizza.
I think one of them takes the beer. I think it's Isadora just chills with a beer.
Someone actually takes the beer.
In her hot professor form.
Oh my god.
Side note, sidebar about the group chat. One of the biggest mic drops in the series is Blake saying, okay, if any of y'all know any, like, Beeheims and Duchamps that deserve it, I will go after them for you, and we'll call it square. And I think it's Penelope who's like, Blake, no one's gonna fucking do that. And then he's like, 7 people have already DM'd me.
Oh my god! That was... Oh... That was such an S tier moment.
That was, but like, it's also so dark at the same time.
It's just like, man, one of the things that really impressed me about Pact early on is like, every single chapter is like the characters reeling from the fallout of the last chapter. Then the middle of the chapter is like either a fight or setting up our next plot point. And then almost every single chapter in Pact ends with like a god tier cliffhanger.
Yeah. And
that's just one of those god tier cliffhangers, man.
It really is. Man, that arc was difficult. We'll have to talk about that. Ainsley, so as soon as Ainsley was introduced, something felt different about her. She's introduced, as I recall, at least in a major way. I want to say it's like arc 5 or 6, I want to say it's 5 when they're in the prison and there's a bunch of Duchamps making sure Blake can't escape.
And she's like counting numbers down on her candle, and it's like implied if she gets all the way through with it, Blake will just be totally incapacitated, I think.
Dude, do you remember that there's a fucking time loop in this story? Oh my god.
Dude, later on we need to choose like top 3 arcs for each person.
Yeah, we need to do that.
That's gonna be one of them.
So like, oh man, as soon as Ainsley, like something about, cause Blake shows Ainsley, like not remorse, but he holds back and shows her, what's the word I'm looking for? He's nice to her in a fancier way to say it, during their fight, mercy. And there's a bit of a moment of understanding that kind of stood out for me because nothing similar had happened to the story, where it seems like in another circumstance these people could have been friends, to the point where you can go back in our talks and I say, there's a lot being built up about Blake getting married to someone. I bet it's Ainsley. And you know what? Given that the story removes Blake from existence for a bit, I think there was still a path if like Blake wasn't the fallback guy where Ainsley would have been his wife. I don't know why she ends up with Peter in a weird way. So there's something to that.
Dude, I just love that moment in that fight you described where he shows mercy, because like the way Wildbow describes her face, I can just imagine this girl's worldview crumbling. Like,
yes.
Oh my god, like, has everything I've been taught been wrong? Like, her dad was not inherently that bad?
She and the other Beeheim that's with her so clearly show, like they've been propagandized to believe these things about the Thorburns, and actually, she's never actually interacted with one to this degree, and it's just really interesting.
Yeah. The only thing, oh man, I just remembered from that also fight at the police station, there was an electric fence, and then one of the goblins like peed on someone and then peed on the fence, and like the electricity arced through his pee to shock them.
Fucking goblins, dude.
Yeah,
I think she's A tier. Is that weird?
It's higher than I'd put her. I would put her like IB, but.
We'll put her here, top of B, because also the candle breaking moment is just lives rent free in my mind. She's part of the final party. She is the Beeheim along with Alistair of the final party, as I recall.
Dude, yeah, she gets a lot of mileage out of that candle, man.
She gets, her candle lets her CC people by slowing them down or freezing them completely, depending on like how much the candle's burned, I think, or how far she's put the needle in the candle, something like that. I don't remember what Owen does. I think he's the Beheim with Ainsley, I think.
Get him out of here.
Okay. Let's not spend time.
Okay.
If neither of us can remember him,
Okay.
he's got other things.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, but
Jeremy Meath is a cool character. He gets a interlude that is one that I want to go reread because I feel like it doesn't correlate to the story very much, but it does a lot for his character and showing where he's from.
The whole thread of like the relationship between him and
Sandra
Duchamp, man, that thread is actually kind of present throughout the whole story.
And like it has like an end that's kind of heartbreaking and like
it's just like a really good side quest story that's just kind of there if you care to really, go back and follow it.
Yeah, and he does some cool stuff. Like, I think there's a moment during the library fight where he calls upon his god to smite people.
Fuck, dude!
That's so
and,
cool.
Like,
and I like when
they put up all these protections around Hillsglade House, and he's like, if a god wants a door opened, it will open.
Yeah, he has an arc where he feels like the main antagonist, where it's him and his, like, posse of fuck teenagers.
Yeah, dude.
That invade the house, and he drops the stank bomb where he gets everyone drunk. Yeah, memorable character. Definitely, like, I think out of the Toronto people, it's between him and Isadora for the best. And,
dude, Isadora's definitely better, but Jeremy's not anything to sneeze at.
Maybe high B?
I was thinking either right above Ainsley or right below Conquest. I could go with either one of those.
Okay, we'll put him here. I don't think
I
don't think he's quite A.
Yeah.
But you know what? You know what's gonna push him? During, like, Blake's blood feud that he has for a while there, during the Bell arc, Jeremy is, like, the one person who's able to compromise and, like, not immediately demonize Blake for what he's doing, which I don't even know if Blake deserved that at that moment of the story, but Jeremy kind of comes through, and there's a line where he's like, where they kind of connect in a way that I wasn't expecting, and I feel like it's partially why Blake's kind of comes on like a downswing after the big murder spree.
Yeah, Jeremy is very level-headed, and I think he always stops to make sure he has a reason to fight this person before he actually fights them.
I also love how Speed Chuck does his voice.
Hell yeah.
Nick, I mean, come on. Nick's a fucking goat.
He's a ride or die, dude.
Dude, Blake loves Nick.
He simps for Nick.
Blake has so much respect for Nick, and like it's never like formalized, and he should. Nick is just a cool dude. He's always there. He's a ride or die. He doesn't get like to do very much, but at the same time, he does.
Nick was one of those people where, like, when Blake had nothing going for him, because like later on in the story, obviously things like the situations get worse and worse, but Blake acquires more and more allies. This was at a point in the story where I think Blake just dead ass had zero allies. Like even Rose was probably questionable. And
when was this?
So this was like Blake first arrives in Toronto. Yes, Rose gets snatched away from him, so they can't even communicate anymore. He doesn't have Evan yet, and he just has the Knights as a contact, and he's like, I guess I'll ask them if they can give me something to help, and they're like, yeah, boom, enchanted shotgun, boom, chain. Like,
yeah, oh my god, they're so good. And also, like, when they show up to the prison, that was such a ray of hope, because it's like, how the fuck is Blake gonna escape the time loop? And I don't recall if the time where they showed up is the time he escapes, but I think that was like round 2. Man, that's such a good arc. Anyways, he can't go too high, but also he can't go too low.
He can't go too low either. I was going to put him like maybe around or above the Astrologer.
He's got to be in B.
Above Roxanne.
Yeah, but I think above Paws.
Yeah. Not above Tyler, though.
Who is Essilt, man?
So, okay, this character's going to go low, probably low C. This is one of the fairies that was exiled and hangs out with
the only fairy that really made an impact on me was Padraig. Though, is this like the ones that they fight early on? That like is the tutorial fight fairy?
No. So the tutorial fight fairy was Penelope's familiar, Latita.
Holy
Um,
shit, yeah.
and so Essel, I think the only thing we really learn about them is that they come from a line of famous torturers in the fairy world.
Yeah.
And like the fairy world is a place where torture is a pastime, so like being known for your torture skills is like holy shit. But they don't really do a lot, so fuck it.
Midge. Midge is a cool other, and she gets a cool interlude as well.
Yeah, she was all right. You know what?
I think when I think of Midge, I think of the scene where Tiffany gives Midge like a coat, or like several coats
Aw.
tied
Oh
together.
yeah. And she has to like button them together and shit.
But like
Oh.
what? Like here.
Yeah, right above Penelope, maybe.
She's a yeah
She,
yeah
she,
yeah.
she. It was cool to see where she came from. Like she was just living in this fucking cabin that was. I don't know if the cabin was already in the abyss or if like she walked into like a
I
recluded,
I yeah
like recluse corner of their cabin and stumbled into the
I think
abyss.
she got very subtly brought into the abyss, but I think was her
It
family
seems.
also otherly, or were I forget how that worked.
I think that they were all just inbred.
Yeah,
But it seemed like maybe she did stumble into the abyss from having no connections because I got the feeling she was almost like a feral child who
yeah.
like just lives in that room for her entire life. So maybe since her parents hardly ever do shit, like just going into that closet could just take you into the abyss.
It's something that just kind of occurred in her interlude, which kind of took me
Yeah.
aback. I don't really have much to say about Mr. Man. He's not really the one we're here for.
That's the thing. Like the lawyers as a unit are
He's super
cool.
cool.
He doesn't do a whole lot. I think he's like I don't know.
He summoned some strong things near the end.
Yeah,
I'd put him like I don't know,
Catherine level or some shit.
Catherine level, Catherine tier character.
Like he can't go too low just because he's a partner, dude.
Dude, he's a yeah. So like, man, Molly Walker, kind of the catalyst for this whole story.
Yeah, man.
I think Molly being dead by the end of chapter one was, or maybe it's chapter two, is so important for this story.
And God, like her ghost is rightfully so filled with just anger at what happened to her because we already learned early on in the story that she got killed by monsters and shit like that, and so we're like, oh, how terrible. And then Blake gets introduced to the world and he starts seeing monsters. It's like, oh man, any of these things she got killed by would be horrible. Then we found out that Mags was responsible and she was killed by goblins, and then we get just chat like goblins are present through the whole story, and there's no shortage of moments showing us just how depraved and horrible they are.
Christ, yeah. Like
And then
when you really start to think about like Molly's last moments, it's not pleasant.
yeah, because I think the first time we hear her ghost talk, she is like almost yelling at Mags, saying that they used corkscrews on her, and
Ah,
I'm just like, God, Molly had it rough.
I'll say. And then she ascends to godhood almost, which is like, whoa, this is a huge swerve in the
Damn.
story. And then she begins the miasma arc from Worm, but this time I liked it. So
It's pretty, dude. The bell was fucking sick.
the bell was cool in the way it is mentioned and not mentioned selectively throughout that arc. The one
Yeah,
downside I have to say about the bell arc is once Hillsglade House starts getting sucked in, Molly just kind of gets written out of the story and is killed off screen by the Abyss.
yeah.
She's
Like,
claimed
yeah.
by the Abyss off screen, which I think is
So
pretty
I
neat.
get. I think she's like maybe ruling some portion of Jacob's bell that's in the abyss, if there's any still down there.
Man, why is it Pale a direct sequel, dude? I think a direct sequel would have been so cool.
So on that note, and we've talked about this before. Wildbow does want to write more stories in the other verse,
Which he
I think
should.
people call it. So I think what he mentioned next was there was actually something cool introduced in Pale I liked about this tenement full of people who aren't awakened, but they're like aware, like they've had run-ins with the supernatural. So that's gonna be kind of cool. But then I think he said in the future he might actually have the idea to have a story that incorporates both Pale and Pact.
Please, for the
Like,
love of God. Like, here's the thing. Molly's third Blood and Fire never happened. Like that is such a dangling thread in this
No,
plot.
we need that, dude.
Dude, like
And
and like exploring what became of Jacob's Bell. Like we don't have to get into any Blake stuff, but we can get into some Rose stuff, some Molly stuff. Or sorry,
I think
some Maggie.
As of now, I think Wildbow has still kind of kept good on his promise that like you don't have to read Pact to read Pale, because I think people said there are like cross references, but there's not like a ton of them. I think the most substantial one we got is like people met the goblin that was certainly responsible for Maggie's no swearing rule. So that's probably just some fun throwback stuff.
So where does I think Molly is integral to the story. I think like she's a good way to introduce the Thorburns into the story around Arc 11. I will say Arc 11 is probably where the story takes like a bit of it's very fast paced and then it kind of slows down for a bit. But as soon as Molly starts popping off, I think it was mandatory to like introduce all these elements, like the Thorburns coming back into town and Molly's growing rage. I really like her scenes with Maggie, as Maggie like she can never apologize for what's happening, but Maggie tries in her own way to make reparations.
I think Molly could go like either above or below Ty, maybe. What do you think?
Where is Ty? There he is. Yeah, that seems fair.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good spot.
Padraic is such a weird character to me.
What a fucking fucker it is.
What a freak.
I think the very first encounter we have with him is one of the moments that I don't know. I just started getting kind of engrossed in this world of Pact, because I think the first time he sees Blake, he calls her Rose because like he just genuinely cannot tell the difference between like an ancestor and a descendant.
Which I mean, there's also hints I think to that conversation of him like knowing more about their true nature than he lets on. Potentially that might be a reach, but go on.
And you know, obviously he does a bunch of shitty stuff to Maggie, which I do think it was I think this is like the cautionary tale for do not fuck with fairies, because he's like, all I want is one thing from your bag. And he's like, you know what? I'll even let you go through your bag and take out anything you would not want me to have before I choose it. But if there is something in your bag, I'll be able to take it as my token. And she's like, okay, take out like all my fucking notes. She's like, take out like anything with like personal information, blah, blah, blah. And he looks through her bag, sees her name on a piece of paper. He's like, well, your name is in your bag, ergo, I now own your name.
Dude, he fucking played her. That was such a hard arc. And all just so he could go see what's going on. Like, he's like, fun shit's going on in Toronto, and I want a front row seat.
Oh, dude, and Maggie falling into that trap, it was like a car crash in slow motion, because the arc starts out with her like talking about how bad the fairies have tricked other people at her school. And the thing is, she's like, I know Padraig's doing to me, but because I know he's doing it to me. No, she knows Padraig's doing it to her. And she's like, a lot of people fall into the trap of thinking that just because you know it's happening, you'll be able to prevent it. She's like, I'm not that dumb, but she's also still doing it. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, she got overconfident, and it cost her so much of her life, you know? Like, she's probably still fixing what the damage of her name being stolen for that period, like, years on.
And, you know, Padraic eventually comes back to see her after the Toronto arc is over, and she's kind of established her new identity, and he doesn't have a change of heart. He keeps the identity, but he also doesn't really mock her for trying either. I think he even sounds like proud sounds too nice, but like impressed that like she's not totally spiraling.
So there's a scene, he impersonates her, right, at some point.
Yeah.
Near the end, and then he gets called out. This is right before we get his interlude, as I recall. Isn't there also a scene, like, I vaguely remember, and this was something where, like, I was listening to the audiobook and couldn't rewind at the time, where Maggie sees Padraic near the end of the story and doesn't seem pissed, like she nods to him or something. It was weird. I don't know if you remember a
I
scene
can't
like
remember.
that. Okay, I'm probably making it up.
All I
But
know is there was that scene where I think Blake is like walking. Oh, he's walking up on Sandra Duchamp and her entire
yes.
army, trying to get his seventh Duchamp husband kill. And there's the two Maggies, and like half of that chapter is like, which Maggie's the real Maggie? Is the one trapped the real one, or is the one standing right next to me the real one?
Yeah, that's and then like in his interlude, don't we find out that he had been impersonating one of the Duchamps or something?
Yeah, he was impersonating the youngest one, I think.
Forgot her name, but like, doesn't he keep her locked up and like her birthday's never coming? Like, it's always
That's the thing. I think
it's incredibly fucked up.
It's incredibly fucked up. I think he has her in some little pocket dimension, and they're like, "Oh yeah, in a few hours it's going to be your birthday, and you'll get to leave here and get awakened and get your fairy." And they're like, "Yeah, a few hours. As soon as that clock on the wall reads this time, you'll get to leave." But I think the clock is like going slower than real time, so it's like she's going to be stuck in there for a very long time.
Jesus. So yeah, he's disgusting. I have to ask though, what did he serve the story in the end? Because I can't remember what he does in the final arc that really stuck out to me.
He doesn't do a whole lot in the final arc.
Yeah,
be real.
he just kind of pieces out, which begs the question: like, we spent a lot of time hyping this guy up, but
I think maybe he's mostly just there for Maggie's arc, and Maggie's arc is ultimately there for Blake's arc, because he's there to give Maggie this crisis of identity and to show what happens to someone in Pact when they lose their connections to the world. And of course, Maggie is able to ground herself before she falls into the abyss. And then by extension, the purpose of her arc is immediately after her, we see Blake, who has lost all those connections and lost into the abyss.
Man, that was such that was such a 1-2 punch for us to return to the audiobook too.
Shit.
That's the thing. So where does this guy end up? I feel like he's world building, but it gets too much screen time for what it's worth. Honestly,
he deserves to go above like Pris or Penelope.
I think he's like low B.
Yeah, fuck it.
This is probably the hottest take in our list so far. I know
because I'm sure everyone loves him, and I mean he's awesome when he's on screen. I feel like he was gonna have some sort of climax, you know.
I feel like Levin is man tier, but man has the name. So
so all right.
So did I get Ellie and Catherine confused? Is Ellie the mom?
No, Catherine is definitely the mom. Ellie is like, she's estranged. She did drugs and gambled and shit like that.
She's the one who like looks like she would go to juvie or like is dressed like a punk.
I think she's the one who like tries to rob Hillsglade House and she stores stuff in the closet.
Yeah, that was so frustrating because like Blake just has to watch it as it happens. Ugh.
But man, you know what? Ellie really surprised me because whenever they were coming off of the Home Alone arc and the house was truly getting overrun and they were going to have to escape into the abyss, she actually puts her ass on the line to save Peter.
She does. That's the thing about the Thorburns. Throughout like the adversity, they do slowly show their humanity. Yeah. And it's cool because like even among the worst people there's good, and I feel like that's kind of the service of the Thorburns getting reintroduced to the story as protagonists, is to mine some good out of them and show some positive lights in a hopeless situation.
Yeah.
Dude, Fell's awesome.
Or hold on, where does Ellie go though?
Oh shit, where does
put her above like Midge, maybe?
Yeah. I like Penelope more.
She cool. Is Midge above Penelope? Yeah.
No, Midge is one of the goons. The goons squad.
The goons.
Dude, Fell's fantastic.
S tier, right? Come on.
You think so? I was thinking at least A.
Low S? I was thinking low A. Low
high
S,
A. High A.
High A. Dude, he's the man.
I love how, like, he just hates Blake, but is helping him out. He gets brought into the situation. With the short amount of time he has in the story, he's fantastic. He's an illusionist. And I love how he drops Thorburn with the hard R. He's so angry to be saying that name.
him and Blake are the fucking buddy cops, man.
But man, when they bond over their car and bike
I
respectively, I
know.
don't know why, and then he fucking dies. It's so unjust
And Fell really is a mentor for Blake for a lot of this. Like, you can, like, if Blake asks for advice, Fell hates giving it, but like sometimes Fell will just give advice on his own because, like, I think Blake was actually kind of on a lying streak for a little bit when he was in Toronto, and Fell thought he was possessed for a second, and Fell kind of gave us the reason you can't really lie because the story established practitioners can't lie, but it's like it doesn't physically prevent you from lying. They're like, if you lie, you're going to lose power, but it's like, what does that really mean? And he's like, if you lose too much power, something else is going to fill the gaps in place. And that's around the time Blake's tattoos start like moving on their own.
Yeah.
So it's like there's a spirit inhabiting him, but
Man.
no, Fell, because Fell has this whole dynamic where he has to serve someone he fucking hates.
His family enemy is his master, and he's
Dude, and like his ancestor. The way it happened is he was like, I swear on everything I have, like I'll destroy you, like on all my power and shit like that. And he could feel himself getting stronger, and I'm like, oh, Pact is so cool. But the consequence was when he lost, he just had nothing, and so Conquest was like, you're mine.
owns his entire family line. I really like how he's like, I'm biding my time to be able to defeat Conquest. Actually, all of us are aware that Conquest is slowly losing power. We just kind of have to wait till someone else takes over. And Blake's over here fucking everything up. This fucking Thorburn. It's fantastic.
And he would like rebel against Conquest in extremely subtle ways that would slowly drain Conquest's power. Like, for example, if Conquest gave him an order, he might like pretend not to hear it, because if Conquest has to say the order a second time, it's less Conquesty.
Damn, man.
Like, that's so petty.
This is probably like disproportionately high, given he's only in the story for like 3 arcs.
He's the man.
But fuck it, we don't have
his death hit me fucking hard. Like,
yeah, it was because Blake wakes up from the candle. It's like we lost Fell. I'm like, God damn it,
dude. And Fell's introduction felt like a stand encounter because Blake had all of his friends over at his apartment.
Oh, and he's just in the corner.
If he counted heads, he would count 11 people. But if he went around naming everybody, there were only 10 people.
That's very the face guy in Worm to Mr. Nice Guy or whatever.
Yeah, that was rad.
Great. Walbo loves that shit. S tier.
S tier. Dude. So, Alistair, very bold character introduction for me because he was like introduced and became relevant relatively late in the story.
Like arc 13 late.
And like introducing such an important character so late is very bold, but like within paragraphs of him being introduced, he was like one of the most intimidating people in the story.
So competent, but so like overconfident, but also competent. I think is a way to describe it.
He like exemplified the qualities that Blake has been hammering in throughout the entire story, like confidence, theatrics. Like, Alistair is like a very spirit-focused practitioner. Like, oh my god.
They have the fight where Alistair's reading out predictions, and Blake has kind of like find a way to like make those predictions lose meaning or come not true. Or he's with his tarot cards. He's got the cool side plot about the Behinds themselves, trying to figure out if he's the one who should lead them, because he's very hesitant. Like, he uses a lot of the Behind power near the end, maybe like more than the plot necessitated, because he slows down that final day of Hillsglade House. I think a lot. He either doubles the day or something like that. So he expends a lot of power, and he also introduces the concept that like he gives up his own time and absorbs time from his schoolmates to kind of add to the well of power with the Behinds, which is such an interesting concept in general.
Yeah.
He's got the Clockwork Knight, which is like...
Dude, that thing was fucking cool, because like the first time it's fighting Blake, like whenever it does move, it basically teleports, but there's like a certain amount of time between each one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It was weird.
He like... He has like a sort of sweet relationship with Rose, but then he's like, what am I getting into? As like stuff gets tougher and tougher, you just kind of feel bad that Alistair's in the middle of this.
And Rose eventually reaches that point where she's like, I could see it maybe one day. She's like, I could see it.
If only I had a heart.
Yeah, right. And she eventually does.
She eventually does. Oh man, dude.
Oh
Yeah, like he got introduced. He's the Katakuri of Pact. Gets introduced super late. Becomes one of my fan favorites.
He is a total beast. Definitely S tier. Gotta love him.
And a huge part of the final arc. He's one of the final party members. So.
Man, what a guy.
Joanna Duchamp. I think that's who like.
She's the
Blake
one, I think.
Is it? Is this the one Padraig has, or is it the one like Blake holds to like gunpoint?
Oh,
basically,
fuck, I don't know, man.
Either way, not important enough to get like.
Get that shit out of here. Blood fairies, because fairies are cool.
The demon.
What a guy, man.
Not really a character, but my god, are those stressful arcs where he's present.
I remember one part that was cool is like Rose was like invoking him to say his own name for them. And he eventually complied and said his name, but then like ate the sound so they couldn't hear it. So he's like, I said it, you just didn't hear it.
Dude, that whole eating reality stuff is so mindfucky because that happens a lot in Arc 16 when they're like in the domain and they look at a portal that Faisal opened to a dimension where as soon as you see what's in it, it gets like consumed. It's so weird to even think about.
Oh yeah.
Anywho, as an antagonist, is incredibly terrifying. I also remember him like when Blake gets to the God in the Abyss, like crawls down there and starts fighting Blake before Blake is even out of the abyss. It was like I wasn't expecting to see him like start the fight that early.
He has a very horrifying introduction because up to this point, we had heard like descriptions of Barbatorum, but we hadn't properly seen him. And we had seen Paws, who's like an imp. So going into that factory for the first time and seeing was like our first proper here's a fucking demon, like 7 arcs in.
Dude, the way he gets beaten, oh my fucking god. When Blake writes the story of Blake and Rose to create something to weaken him. Oh, that was such a cool sequence.
There's so many just cool little things in his fight, like Blake's fire goes out, and he's like, oh my god, I have to light another fire. He's like, wait, where's my lighter? How could I be an idiot? I forgot my lighter. And he's like, wait, I wouldn't have had a fire in the first place if I didn't bring it.
Yeah, it got consumed.
And then one of them that I think it's actually pretty commonly known, I see people point it out all the time, is that like early, before Blake fights he has a cell phone at one point, like he does dial a number, and then later on, Fell's talking to Blake, and he's like, how the hell do you not have a cell phone? How do you survive in this day and age without a cell phone? And Blake's like, I don't know, I guess I'm just not the kind of guy who ever got one.
Holy shit, yeah, that one went over my head. That's cool. I think there was also something about, like, some imps or goblins coming with them into the factory, but they get written out of existence, so they... Like,
oh, man.
Like, there's just hints that they were there.
I'm going to credit Deep in Pact for these ones, but, like, before the first time Blake ever fights Rose is like, if you come up with 3 solid ideas, we can go in there and try to fight it. And in that chapter, we only ever see Blake actually come up with 2 ideas that she accepted. One of the ideas that initially was rejected was going in there with like electric halogen lights. So it's like, oh, he only ever came up with 2 ideas, but whenever it's Fell's chapter and we see them walking in, he actually does have the halogen lights.
That's so interesting, man. Oh my, Wildbow fucking snapped with this story.
And then,
like, it might be rough around the edges, but this man was on another stratosphere while he was writing.
And I think with the goblins, it was like, this thing is like oozing its body everywhere and has its own blood leaking all over the place. But at one point, Blake sees it seem to bite its own hand and a different kind of blood comes out. And he's like, that's not what its blood looks like. And he's like, I think we had allies and I think they just got eaten.
Jesus. So like, that's really cool. I think that makes him B at least.
Yeah, put put him in there. Put him.
I
Is
like
he
him.
above Pedro?
I think he's above Ped. He's above.
Yeah, put him
He's above
Pedro.
Paws. Come on.
Yeah, come on, come
He's
on.
cool as
Imp
hell.
demon, know your place.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Also, isn't he and Barbatorum like tier 3 demons?
So I think is actually a tier below Barbatorum.
And he's weaker.
I think they called him a low level and Barbatorum's a mid level.
Barbatorum's a mid-level, bro.
I know it is.
Story's insane. James Corvidae is kind of cool. I like my boy JP.
He has so many good moments, like where he had been around helping defend the Cabal, and then in one chapter he's not there, and Blake's like, "Where'd he go?" And they were like, "Well, Rose was gonna go to sleep," and James said, "Don't worry, I'll look after you while you sleep," and so she banished him.
I like when I like when Blake wakes. I think it's like when he wakes up from the candle, like when he gets knocked out by Isadora, and they were hesitant on summoning JP. Why do they call him JP? Is it James P. Corvidae? Either way,
Probably.
And then he wakes up and Rose is, I think, in the mirror, outside the mirror with like Granny Rose's clothes, and Corvidae is sitting next to her, and it's like the dude you didn't want your daughter to date, they're dating now, and you just kind of have to accept it. It was very awkward. I also like when Blake's getting visions of what's going on in the real world while he's in the abyss. They're having the council meeting, and Crone Mara and Corvidae share a look and smile, and Blake is like, what the fuck is going on there?
Yeah, that's the thing is
menacing.
Corvidae is like, I get the sense that he's quite old. So
yeah,
I don't know.
His interlude is so interesting to the point of almost like losing me at points, where he's like a cobbled up spirit that was made, and then like he gets bounced back to his creator, and that's his creator gives up his own life so that Corvidae can kill the people who bound him. And throughout that whole time, he meets Mara and like gets like he has a wedding ring with Mara. It's so interesting. I definitely got to reread that interlude.
He seems to like be such a prolific boogeyman that he's almost a household name, because whenever Blake is at Duncan's house and Conquest and his army show up, Blake is like, "Oh yeah, James Corvidae's upstairs with Duncan's wife," and like everyone is like, "Oh my god!" So I'm like, people must know about him.
And I also like how Mara kills him to be able to resummon him, but also like when she kills him, it allows her to gain more power during the fight. So that's really cool. This guy's at least A to me.
A, huh?
Yeah, I think he's really intimidating. He's got a weird presence. He's very
yeah.
He's like he's an ally a lot of the time that you know will become an antagonist at some point.
I feel like among the boogeymen, he does get the spotlight. I could see him going above or below Jeremy.
I'd put him above Jeremy.
Yeah, let's do it.
Dope. Briar Girl doesn't get to do much. She always interested
she
me.
didn't get to do much.
She always seemed neat, right? She's just kind of like a weird witch, like forest witch lady.
I think her whole thing was that she wanted the land that Hillsglade House is on, but I don't know. What does she really do?
C tier?
C tier, but like...
But how C?
Like, I'm thinking maybe even like Shepherd level.
Ooh.
She doesn't do much, man. I don't know.
The thing is, like, it's cool when she shows up in the school for a little bit in Arc 8.
Put her above Katherine.
Yeah, all right. Catherine's a nice gatekeeper. She's also colored differently.
Yeah. Good gatekeeper.
We'll wait a little bit on Johannes.
Oh my god.
Dude, I think Duncan is deeply underrated.
Duncan is so good.
Duncan was such a weirdly good antagonist to me.
He was one of my favorite antagonists in the story because it was so different. Because most of his early fights were verbal fights.
They have such good back and forth. The fucking time loop fight. I was so hyped listening to that.
I think the moment I realized that I truly, truly loved Pact, and I think this might have been like when I was still talking about the story, whenever before you started reading it, when I was just like talking a little bit about the story. Mm-hmm. It was just like, I don't know. Duncan is like do you see ghosts and goblins, Mr.
Oh
Thorburn?
my, yeah,
And Blake,
the interrogation, dude, because they found him over Evan's corpse. Oh my
it's like Blake
god.
is totally fucked. Because he's like, if he says yes, I see ghosts and goblins, they're gonna be like, okay, well, he's crazy. If he says no, he doesn't, that's lying, and then he loses. So he's like, I mean, I'm open-minded, like who's to say what can be proven? Like,
That was so. Oh yeah, dude. I also like when the thing is when Blake loses his connections. I think Duncan becomes a little less interesting because he doesn't have that antagonism, and then he kind of falls
yeah,
off late story. And that's the one bad thing I can say about Duncan. What's cool about Duncan is that he's the rare fight where he's only slightly stronger than Blake. I felt like Duncan Stan battled Blake into a rough situation, but Blake is competent enough to be able to keep up with Duncan because Duncan's like displayed as not the most competent among the Beeheims. He's kind of like a underdog, mid to low tier Beehive.
he's like a mid-level
Yeah,
kind of
yeah, yeah.
behind.
So
Because
I felt like it was a cool, fair matchup despite the tough situation.
no, that's a good point, and that
And
is
then,
what makes it
and then
stand
Blake
out.
gets won over when he goes to the house, and then now you're trapped in my situation
Yeah.
because I got bogeyman in the house within your wife.
It is really unique because most of the encounters are Blake fighting against people possibly stronger than him and just trying to live another 60 seconds. But Duncan really did feel like ranked Pact, like he got match made with
Yeah.
Duncan, and it's roughly equal, and they got to duke it out.
They had roughly equal elos at the time. I
Yeah.
agree, dude. I think just because he falls off the story keeps him from S, but I'm gonna make a strong contender for A.
Oh, dude, I'd put him higher than that in A, even.
I'd put him higher than Isadora.
Yeah, fuck it.
I'd put
Let's
him
go.
higher than Fel, dude. He's borderline.
Yeah, I love Duncan. Duncan's the man.
The thing is, like, Alistair comes too late, Duncan leaves too early. You know?
Exactly.
Ah, fuck it.
That's the thing. Like, Alistair, Duncan, and Laird are the behind trifecta,
Oh my
dude.
god, and they all have like they all challenge Blake in different ways. I feel like Alistair's another good matchmaking character for that point of the story too.
I know.
Man, the main Beheims are great. I'm gonna
Beheims,
let you
low-key?
make. I'll make you the
Let's put
last.
him very top of A. Very top of A. Because, we don't... You can't soil S by putting too many people in there.
Callan's the one who just gets killed in the library, right?
Yeah.
Eh,
I think the thing he had going for him is, like... Kristoff... Him and Kristoff
yeah.
were both some of the more innocent of the relatives. Kristoff, I think, was more innocent just by virtue of him being younger. I think Callan, Peter and Ellie do call him a bit of an asshole, but even then, I think he was supposed to be one of the more well-behaved.
reasonable ones, I guess.
And he was Molly's older brother, I think.
Yeah. Oh, so you know what? If he is Molly's older brother, he does have that good scene where like him and his mom and Kristoff are sussing out Molly for always showing up, and they're like, "What exactly is your relationship to our daughter/sister?" You know?
Yeah.
And he was really mean there in a way that like I think added a lot of tension to the scene. So I think that keeps him like high C. You know?
Yeah, I could go high C.
I think above Penelope,
Yeah, let's do it.
above
Sounds fair.
Velly. You know what? Fine, something like that. Keller, that's a city in Texas.
What the fuck? This sounds familiar. Hold on, let me consult the handy-dandy notebook. Let's see what we got.
Yes, our notes that we took.
Oh, not trash. Even lower than Essel, dude.
Oh, this is the
it's-
other ferry?
It's the other fairy, and the thing is, I could at least remember Essel's description. I can't even remember Keller's description.
It'd be unfair to split them, so we'll do that. Joanna feels
Oh.
kind of whatever. They're fairies, so they have fairy
Yeah,
stuff.
get that
going
shit
on.
out of here.
Mara is interesting. I feel like she got kind of just. She was just like they had to go through her lands to get to Johannes, but her motivation for actually fighting the crew felt a little flimsy.
Yeah, I wasn't really fucking with her fight a whole lot.
I'll actually sidestep that. I was fucking with her fight a lot. I thought it was really tense with the way the forest like kept shaking as stuff was getting tenser. The way that
that was cool. I was
way
just kind
that
of
she-
confused what was going on.
I just got confused why we started it, but I was super into
Yeah.
it because you have her forcing Blake to kill someone, And then like,
That was
oh my
cool.
god, Blake's at a point of the story now where I'm like, he might genuinely kill one of the Cabal because number wise, it's the only valid option. He's like, well, of course I'm gonna kill the two Jeremy people, but then I actually have to kill someone I care about. And I got really worried, so that was really cool.
Oh, you
She's
know what it was? They were going to go investigate her because they didn't know who was responsible for Jacob's bell sinking into the abyss was
right.
yet. So they were going to investigate her, and she just doesn't want people fucking with her in general. So she set up those booby traps, and they eventually got to her, questioned her, found out that. Well, I think she refused to answer whether she was responsible for
Well,
it, but
they
they kind of
forced the
reasoned.
power out of her through
Yeah,
all her
they reasoned
lies.
like she wasn't, and then yeah, she was threatening them because they're like, okay, well, we can just leave, and she's like, well, no, like I don't want you to leave either. I want you to have to kill people to leave because she hates them.
And like during that fight, she has the thing where she makes one of the knights die out of a heart attack. She's basically
Oh my
building
god,
up to where she can start one-shotting people, which is horrifying. And she's got the
yeah,
birds in the forest working for her. She's kind of badass.
and
I think
I
that
think she
fight's really
serves as a
good.
cool reminder that you know, Pact is a very fluid magic system, and a lot of their magic is just traditions. And so, like, the whole thing of the implement, familiar, and domain isn't like a locked in rule of Pact. It works well because it's a tradition of, like, I don't like, in Canada and the United States, you're going to find a lot of people doing those three rituals because those are things that, like, originated in European practice. But like for example, she's been around for a long time before the Europeans ever came to America. So apparently she doesn't like necessarily abide by those same principles.
Yeah, like thousands of years. Her whole thing is like she wants things to go back to the old ways. That's kind of her motivation. I think
Oh.
two things worth mentioning. Her relationship with JP is gives us a lot of tension there because then she starts using JP in certain ways during that final fight. She's got some cool powers there. I like how they. She's the first character I feel like we see that has to lie. Is that right? Is she the first one that has to like
Yeah,
get
they're like threatening
forsworn?
her, like we're gonna force you to tell lies.
Which was great. Actually, I think they didn't threaten. I think they did it. They like slowly drained her power through
And you know
lies.
what? I know she has a whenever they have her in that situation, she has a really cool philosophical argument with somebody. I can't remember who. It might have been Tiff, but it was like about the nature of change in humanity because I think like Kamara was very opposed to change,
Hmm.
and Tiff and Ty I think like actually challenged that worldview and do a convincing job of it. No, it was Peter.
Peter did.
Peter, it's always
Oh my
Peter.
god, he's the best character in the list so
He's always
far.
the best. So wait, no, I can't believe you skipped this when we talked to Peter. When we talked about Peter. Peter was also the one at the junior council meeting who called them out, where he's like, "Y'all are sitting here and y'all are patting yourselves on the back for making the next generation better with your junior council when you're actually actively deciding to not change anything. You guys suck." And then
Yeah,
he just left the chat.
he really man. How did he like move around in that last arc when his balls are so massive? But
Oh, you know what else Peter did?
yeah, tell
Here's
me.
what else Peter did. Because man, I can't. There's so much we missed on him. You know, Kristoff has that really rough time after Callan dies, and he's thinking like, I really want to get awakened. I want to learn more about magic so I can figure out how to bring him back from the dead. And Peter's like, look, I don't need to tell you. There's a lot of assholes in real life, and over the past few hours, you've learned that all this magic stuff, it's just as bad or worse than real life. He's like, your problems aren't going to go away by learning magic. You need to learn how to handle shit in the real world as training
that's how
first.
Peter shows care, like with harsh,
Yeah.
mean words. Man,
Yeah, he was
this
basically
is
saying like you got to grow the fuck up. Like you need to be able to solve your own problems without magic before you can solve them
dude.
with
We
magic.
need that Pact sequel called Pace or something where we see Molly and or Maggie and Peter again. Oh my god, I want to see Practitioner Peter. He's such
so
a cool
cool.
guy. He's the coolest. Mara also has that scene with Maggie, which was kind of interesting, where she tries to trick Maggie in when she's going around trying to like kind of regain her name. But I think this is a B tier character.
Yeah, B somewhere
I'd put her
below
like
Molly, below Zoe,
I'd
below
put
Tyler,
her above her. I think
above her,
maybe above
her.
Nick. That's probably fair.
Best
Uh,
I'll do. Above
Yeah,
Nick is the best I would do, but I don't want to do it.
we won't. We won't. You're right. That's stupid. June's not much of a character, but I love her dearly.
Dude, June was like he was like Blake's Pikachu. It was his starter Pokemon, dude.
Yeah, well,
Like,
he fucking expended it all to create a blizzard. I think that was during the Duncan fight, even.
dude, in Blake's Nuzlocke, she carried him through the first 3 gyms.
Oh,
Okay?
she really did.
Like, and he really cared for her, man.
The thing,
Like, he really did.
June was so good to show Blake's empathy for people less than human, which
No.
I think was such an important part of his character when he realizes he is also less than human.
So,
High C.
yeah, somewhere in there.
Just by technicality, she's above
Yeah,
Chris.
like she's got to be above. Yeah, that's a good spot. That's a good spot. Dude,
Kristoff.
we're getting down to it, man.
We are, and we're reaching 2 hours, so we got
Kristoff.
about 30 minutes to hit all the major players, and I think that's fair.
I think Kristoff's coolest moment was honestly just that cool moment I gave to Peter a minute ago. He's all right.
But I do like him more than Penelope and Callan. Like, I liked seeing his world get rocked.
Yeah,
put him
so,
here.
Yeah.
Elder sister, man, those I feel like they would have been good. I think they were like the front runners for Lord of Toronto.
Yeah, they were going to be the ladies of Toronto, I guess. And
I like how they're just a sorority that does magic and they fuck with elementals.
And
they're cool.
they don't always necessarily use their powers, but they said, like, I think the exact example they gave is, like, if you're in a business meeting with someone you really don't like, obviously you never would shoot them in the face with a fireball, but knowing you could just gives you a level of confidence, you know?
That's such a good line. Good job, Wild Bow.
I know.
There's not much to her, but I also kind of want to put her, like, lowest B.
Does she go above or below Pedrick? I think below.
I think below is fair.
Yeah.
Pedrick doesn't get to do much at the end, but he gets to do a lot in the middle, so... Lola is one of the final girls. However, what do you think Lola adds to this story?
So I think Lola was actually cool. She had a little bit of a change of heart over the course of it where Mags was the first to kind of recognize that she clearly didn't like the status quo of the Duchant marriages because of the subtle ways she kind of rebels against it, like trying to make herself appear more alternative so that way older men might not like her.
Yeah.
And of course, when challenged on this, she's like, no, it's my family duty. I don't like it, but they'll find someone who likes me just because that's the way it is. But I think by the end of the story, after, they've kind of been told off in their group chat is when she starts kind of accepting maybe things need to change. And I don't know if she gets a grand finale, but I think
I like the way she walks out of the story in the final chapter.
Yeah.
Something about it. It was such a we've been through so much, but I have to go tend to my things kind of ending that for some reason I really liked it. I think Lola's cool. Thing is, I don't remember what she does power-wise near the end. While Ainsley and like Alistair, I felt like had a lot of impact. Could you remind me some stuff Lola does?
I know we explicitly saw Lola do stuff, but I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, it's
I think she actually did some combo attack with Mags because I think they both have the same kind of implement. It's like this little knife thing.
Yeah, and like she's an enchantress, so she's messing around with connections. So maybe it was like stuff that's done in subtext. Like, why did this person look away at this moment, or something like that?
Some shit like that. She's cool, but there's cooler people.
B?
I want to put her in B somewhere.
I think she represents the Duchamps in a good way near the end, and like it's super
really
integral that the ending party has one of every family. So
yeah,
I would put her below Paige.
Yeah,
and I'll let you choose if it's below Eva and Andy.
I'll put her right below Eva and Andy.
There we go.
Yeah.
Man, Laird's borderline S, right?
He borderline. I don't know if he's an S. He's in the bottom of S, but like he was obviously at the start of the story. Everybody was kind of the antagonist, but he felt like the real first antagonist because he is where I lost my innocence in Pact. Really, like I felt
Yeah,
so
he's
betrayed
the
because
first one who got us.
like he was talking to Blake and he was giving all these subtle tips and he did that whole analogy with the countries, which we later found out is just a way for him to say stuff without lying, kind of.
And I remember
Um,
you specifically selling me on this story by bringing up that conversation. That was like
yeah,
the first thing you mentioned.
God, it was so magical. It really helps you fall in love with the story. And you know what? He is he just gets fucking killed by Blake. And
That was a huge moment, and he's torturing Blake with visions of the past while it's happening too.
yeah, he was probably Blake's real first nemesis. But I now
Uh,
here's the thing. There was a part of the story I got kind of confused about where I think was it Sandra who might have been implying like it was his destiny to die in Toronto.
yeah, she says something like that when she comes back.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what that was all about.
Yeah, I wonder what to make of it, you know. But it's also cool that he was trained by Rose. It was really cool seeing young Laird be brought into that circle, and then he brings Alistair, or no, who brings Alistair into the circle? Because Laird's dead.
Um. Oh man, that's weird because we saw Alistair's interlude where he was being trained.
Oh no,
No,
it
I
was
mean,
Laird. It was
I
before
think it
Laird's
was Laird.
death. Yeah.
But here's what's amazing. This story throws me for a loop so many times, and it does it using both Grandma Rose and Laird, because like we see in Grandma Rose's interlude that she wants to team up with Aimon, Laird's dad, to create a better future. So she's gonna teach the Beeheim family about demons. So I'm like, oh, that means Laird is a total asshole and went against the plans because otherwise he'd be helping the Thorburns. But it turns out Grandma Rose's plan all along was actually probably for Laird to be against the Thorburns
Because at the end of the day, she wanted to cripple the Thorburns in just the
yeah,
right way. Is the which when we get to Rose, we need to break down her plan because it's kind
God,
of it's one of those things where they give us the details and then move on immediately. So,
yeah.
uh, do we like him more than Duncan? That's such a close fight. That's actually really close.
I actually have no idea. Cause like
I think I
if
like
I put
Alistair more than both, but then like,
Alistair more than both,
but not
if
by
that's-
even that much.
I'm worried that if I put Duncan above Laird, it might just be recency bias because Duncan came later in the story.
That's what I'm fearing. Laird shows up as one of those ghosts at the end.
Let's put Laird very top of A. I can put him above Duncan.
I can live with that. I can live with
Because
that.
you know what? I feel like Laird. Duncan never actually made it to the head of the family, did he?
No.
Laird was head of the family.
He was de facto for a little bit when they're doing their meetings.
He was just
but-
kind of calling the shots.
Yeah. I like how we got Craig before we got whatever. Craig, I don't even. Craig's who?
Literally who?
Yeah, it doesn't
Craig and
matter.
Owen, get out of here.
I think they've. Craig might be Owen's dad. Who knows?
Man.
Wait, is
Oh,
Owen Laird's son? Was that who that was?
dude, I don't know.
Because Blake kills Laird's son and has to apologize, and I think it is Owen. And Owen's like, the only reason why I don't kill you right now is X and Y.
Oh, fuck it up.
I think that I'm gonna just preemptively
Yeah,
move over there. But
do it
Craig,
for the comments.
no fucking clue, man.
No one knows who Craig is, not even Wildbow.
All right, we're on to the final. Do you want to take?
We only have fire left over.
We only have fire left over.
Yeah, we need a pee break before this one.
Let's do that.
Because I'm gonna be peeing myself.
Do it. Let's finish our food, and what food it is. As we have, I think, what I would consider the most important characters here.
Hell yeah.
Question is, in what order do we eliminate these people?
How could you ever choose?
I think we start with Miss Lewis.
Damn, man. The firm is Man, Levin, and Lewis, but man, emphasis on the Lewis. She's there for Blake's
hard.
tutorial fight, so we grow attached to her. And then she's very unapologetic about the fact that, she's only being nice to Blake, so she hopes he'll join the firm. And good thing he doesn't.
Yeah, because we get that one chapter of a dude who does join the firm, and like fighting demons your whole life seems exhausting. Like demons are really scary.
And being the head of the firm, she's very scary by extension. And even in the interlude of, I don't even know if we ever get his name, but that guy who is like a Diabolist who fucks up and joins the firm, he he even kind of gets to go on a little ride along with Miss Lewis for a little bit to
His
Grandma
tutorial
Rose's house.
fight.
Actually,
Yeah.
yeah, he goes to Grandma Rose's house, and when Miss Lewis is in the other room, he's like, "Oh, well, I mean, at least that lady seems all right." And Rose is like, "She's the head of a powerful firm of diabolists. Do you think she got to where she is by being a remotely good person?"
Oh my
Like,
god. That's one way to put it. As an antagonist, I should have seen it coming, but who would you say is the main antagonist of Pact? You know, like it's kind of hard to pin down because I feel like at the end we're doing with like a three-headed monster.
that's the thing. It's like, Johannes was influenced by Faisal, who might have been influenced by Barbatoro, who is like ultimately working with the firm, and like
So
of the
crazy,
firm,
man.
Miss Lewis is at the top. Like if you put a gun on my head and told me to choose, I'd probably say Miss Lewis.
Yeah, I'd say it.
And she's like who they do the final blow against in a way.
True. Which, the way they beat her, I don't even remember why she's so beat up at the end, actually. Why did she have more fighting power?
Um,
Because
I don't know.
they throw her in a ditch, which was super satisfying, of an ending for someone so powerful. And she's not dead at the end of the story either way. She's just, I think, sucked into the abyss. But I forgot
You know
how
what it might
she's
have been
disarmed.
I remember Rose making like a very concrete declaration that like echoed about how the fight was over
Mhm.
and Rose's side won. And honestly, it might have been that like she like dead ass might have just forswore Miss Lewis because Miss Lewis had been so confident for the entire like two arcs leading up to that.
And she's in the finale of the fight. I specifically remember, like, I think Miss Lewis goes after Blake Hand creature.
Oh my God, Blake was a hand.
uh,
Oh.
yeah, she's really intimidating. She's a really cool force. The lawyers are such a cool concept, and I feel like she is Granny Rose's antagonist in the story, and then
Oh,
maybe
for sure.
Fazal and Barbatorum are like our main characters' antagonists.
It's like from way before the story started, like Rose knew that Miss Lewis knew that Grandma Rose was gonna try something. So like Grandma Rose had to make a plan so under the wraps that like even the lawyers who knew she would try to come up with a plan wouldn't notice it.
Which is
Jesus.
kind of fascinating. But where does she go? A at the very least, right?
Oh, for sure. Like I'm trying to decide if she goes above or below Conquest or Isadora even.
I think she goes above Isadora and Fell.
Okay.
Man,
And
Duncan's such a wall to climb, though.
man, Miss Lewis is just nuts because like she gives you a very warm and comforting feeling actually for a bit of the story because Blake always has her as backup. Like if things get really bad and he's about to die, he can just be like, "Miss Lewis, come save me," and
But
she
then when
does
it's
do that a
time
couple
to,
times.
but when it's time to like really cash it in, she's like, "You're worthless to me now." That was so deflating.
No. And like even in the times where she's nice, like she's just like, "I'm only being nice because I hope you'll give up the rest of your existence to serve me."
She also feels incredibly indestructible before like the end of the fight. There, like they blow her up, they fucking hit her with pretty severe wounds, and she's just knocked down for a while.
Just play her with the same actress in the exact same tone as Kim
Kim
Wexler.
Wexler. Oh my
Yeah.
god.
That is
Oh
like
my-
exactly how I picture Miss
Yeah,
Lewis.
same,
Exactly.
same. I feel like some inspiration for the outfit is taken here as well.
Maybe.
You pick who's next.
Let's do Mags, man.
Mags is great. Gets her own arc. Is one Blake is like her first friend, and she's like Blake's first friend in a lot of
Yeah,
ways.
they get allies. Like in the world of practitioners, you need a way to get an in because it's like whenever you first get awakened, you're probably going to have zero power to your name unless you're a part of one of these big families, and so it's like the only way you'll ever gain power is if, like, I don't know, you can slowly gain power by capturing ghosts, like Blake did with June. But even more important is to form relationship with other practitioners and trade information. And I don't know, they were just kind of each other's first contact. Like, I scratch your back, you scratch mine. And she was, I think, just very charming. not just because of her not swearing rule, which is also
cute.
very charming,
Yeah.
but I don't know, having someone who isn't immediately combative to Blake because she doesn't have as much of a history in this town.
The twist that she killed Molly is like an early stinger for this story as
See,
well.
that is like losing my innocence #2 because we finally meet the first person I feel like we can trust in this story, and she was the one who killed Blake's predecessor.
It was a long time till Blake met an actual trustworthy person, but we just didn't know. You don't know to the end who was the trustworthy ones in the beginning, but it turns out it was one person, and his name was Evan. Everyone else had ulterior motives. Yeah, Max. I like her claiming her name back. That was a cool interlude arc. I'm gonna say arc 17 is a better interlude arc if we're gonna compare the two stories, but that's neither here nor there.
Oh, for sure. But
yeah.
She also, I really admire like her penance for killing Molly. Like she really, like genuinely, truly feels bad. She does the right thing, and I don't think she does it out of like a token karma gesture. I think she goes to that altar every day because she really does feel bad about what she did.
It was particularly well written. We're like, it's hard to write sympathy for a murder, but I think this was a good case of it. And she's part of the final party. She actually does a lot of goblin commanding there at the end. And it's, I don't know. But Pact is weird because the characters who are closest to Blake suffer the most on the second half as far as like character development. Now, Maggie has less of that because she has Molly stuff going on. She has the ambassador stuff. As an ambassador, she has to make a lot of interesting choices. But I feel like, especially with the Cabal, characters who like are in the first half of Pact and the second half of Pact, if they're close to Blake in the first half, they're like they suffer a little bit in the second half as far as like getting screen time because they're not Blake's friends anymore. So I don't know.
I could see it.
Again, she suffers the least from it. I think she's A tier for sure, maybe S.
Oh, definitely an A, and I'd say like anywhere above Fell. I can go with.
I could go above Lewis. I could go above
Lewis.
Duncan and Laird, I guess.
Damn, above Lunkin and Dared?
Nah, Lunkin and Dared, maybe not. Maybe here?
Yeah, that's a good spot.
Man, I feel like Duncan's a hot take on our list.
I feel like people are going to trip.
So, I get to pick the next one, I think.
Yeah, what are we thinking?
I'm thinking we do Johannes.
Yeah, let's go.
So, re-listening to the first arc and the first two arcs of Pact, oh my god, it's so in your face that Johannes is the biggest deal in the story among the characters introduced. I was just so stupid back then.
Like, even among all of these very ancient and powerful families, they're like, how the fuck did he get a domain that big?
It's cool how he did it. He just used dumb technology to do it.
Yeah, didn't he just use speakers? And he's like, as far as my voice reaches, I am claiming my domain.
The thing with claiming a domain that big, right, is that you need to be able to defend it. So I don't think they went into how he was able to, how he claimed it, sure, but defending that must have been hell. But I guess he immediately had Faisal at that point.
Because I think Faisal like shut down the ritual the first like half dozen times he tried it.
Yeah.
I think by the time he actually got to try the ritual, he had already convinced Faisal.
Yeah. So at that point, Faisal becomes his guard dog and he can maintain it.
Yeah.
Interesting turn of events. So, reason with me here. What was Johannes' ultimate plan in your mind? Because Mara just kind of drops it on our lap and we have to go with it.
So his plan, like, for his domain or his plan with Faisal?
Yeah, like his end goal plan in Arc 15 before Faisal turns on him and he gets barbered.
So before the idea of sinking Jacob's Bell was even on the table, I think he kind of had the goal of, like back when I think he claimed his domain when he was like a teenager, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think his goal then was like, he was one of the few people, and he's not the only one, to recognize that the relationship between humans and others is not going so well because humans are multiplying and advancing so rapidly that like so much of the practice is tied into tradition, and addition gets abandoned way faster than progress is being made way faster than tradition can change.
Mm-hmm. But he's for progress, right?
Yeah, others around the world are kind of going extinct, and there's kind of a worry that the world will lose something of itself because of humanity's advancement, but also certain powerful others, out of feeling like their existence is threatened, might lash out and cause problems for humanity. So it's like they're both hurting each other. Others hurt humanity, humanity hurts others. So he wants to create a way for them to coexist where he can maybe create separate spaces where humanity can do its thing, but he can also create a separate space that's like a wonder world for others
Yeah,
where
his
there's
little
people for them to
ghettos.
prey on and they don't have to worry about like human technology and shit like that. So
It's
I think that was his plan.
it's such a flawed. But then wasn't he also down for like he's the one who started the Hillsglade House, but that was a misdirect, right? Because it was actually Faisal. That's the part where I get confused.
Yeah, and so I think he might have, if he did know about Faisal's plan to sink it into the abyss, I think his idea is that he could still have his, like, domain, other paradise, even if it was in the abyss. So, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a
I
little
might need to reread that
confusing.
part.
Yeah, that exactly. I even read that part twice, but I feel like I was already missing context from stuff that went
Yeah.
down with Mara. So that's a future thing. As a character, his personality's pretty cool. Like he seems really competent. He
Dude,
always seemed like a big
he
deal.
is very reasonable, I think, because
Hmm.
I don't know. Whenever he's negotiating with people, I think he does it with both Blake and Mags, and I never get the feeling that he's really truly trying to fuck them over or anything. Like Mags is even obligated to give him an answer to a question at one point, and instead of like learning some secret about her that he could use against her, he's just like, so like, what's the deal with you not being able to swear? How did that happen?
Yeah, yeah, they're doing their like question and answer thing.
Yeah.
Um, the thing is, when I think of Johannes, I actually think of him possessed because when he finally takes action in the
Exactly.
story, it's not really him anymore.
What's cooler about him to me is possessed Johannes and also Faisal. Like I usually lump Faisal and Johannes together, but Faisal's definitely the cooler half, I think.
Okay, so where would you put Johannes? Because we're doing face all next then.
Man, I'd put him above Ainsley, maybe?
That's what I was thinking. Hi B.
Yeah.
The thing with Faisal. So okay, let's go over Faisal's plan. First of all, he's got a cool backstory, but
Oh yeah.
my understanding of Faisal's plan after rereading that chapter so many times, because Blake's just like Faisal did it. I was like, how the fuck did you get here? Anyways, um, Faisal's plan is to let the barber win this fight so that the that's what it was. Okay, hold on. About Johannes. By letting the barber win, his plan was to pit a god against the barber inside the abyss, and Blake is like, I saw the gods down there, they're not doing so hot. This is a
Yeah,
bad
and that's the
plan.
point where Faisal and Johannes were like, shit.
And so Faisal's plan is even beyond that. He's like, okay, the barber wins, gets revenge, sinks all of Jacob's bell. However, when the abyss is gonna have such a hold on him after that that it's gonna lock him away for way longer than a human can, and it's gonna be greater for order in the net positive. At least that's how I
Yeah.
think it goes.
Because, like, with Diabolus and Jacob's Bell, and with the Barber in particular, there's too much, like, potential there for chaos, and the angels are all about order. So it's like, we can completely remove the potential for any demon fuckery if we just dump Jacob's Bell into the abyss, because maybe we lose one small town right now, but a demon like the Barber, over the course of the next few thousand years, could take out several cities. So it's like, in the long run, this might be better for humanity. And the Barber also wins because once he's in the abyss, he'll be free. He can fuck up the Thorburns who bound him, and then he can just continue his rampage throughout the abyss. So it's a win-win. He gets to rampage. Face All gets to not worry about a line of Diabolists and a demon.
Yeah, like that's a really good twist, honestly, that the angel
Oh,
was
it's
in it
so
with the
cool.
demon.
Whenever Blake was like, "Oh yeah, no," and you know what part of it was is Blake was trying to figure out. He had already investigated almost everybody except I think for Johannes and Faisal, and he's like, "It's always been a constant trend throughout my story that people either start out as antagonists to me and then later become allies, or people I thought were allies actually turn against me." and he's like, what if it's not impossible that the two people who seem most like enemies are actually allies? He's like, is there a scenario in which it's beneficial for a demon and an angel to work together? Because I think he also reminded himself not to. There's a piece of advice he always got from Grandma Rose, which is like not to box in types of others too much.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't want to get tunnel vision with angels. He's like, what are angels actually after? It's not just like goodness and anti-demon. It's order.
So let me show my hand. I came into this talk today, in December 8th, where we're doing this, fully ready to kind of shit on Faisal, actually. And the reason is because after that cool reveal, I feel like he doesn't do anything.
Yeah, he
just gets abused.
kind of watches.
He watches and then he gets almost killed by Miss Lewis. She bodies him, and then the barber utilizes him to create portals.
So was the barber trying to use him to like bring more demons into the world?
Yeah, like the vibe I got was he was starting to make big tears into realities to start bringing in more others and demons, which was a cool finale set piece, but we'll get to that in the barber talk. The thing is, for such a powerful being, his thing gets revealed, and then he's just kind of like used and doesn't get much agency in the end. And then when Peter breaks him out, Faisal immediately just flees the situation. He's just done.
Oh yeah, he's gone. We never see that motherfucker again.
No, not once. So it's like, I felt he was pretty underwhelming as what I would consider like one of the main antagonists of the story.
He's fucking cool, but yeah, he took such an active role in setting up this plan, but then took such a passive role, and
it just made it feel like such a shit plan that as soon as he enacts it, he starts losing.
Yeah,
like you had thousands of years to come up with this, and this is how it played out.
He's cool, but could have had a better bow on top.
Other aspects that are worth noting, like his relationship with like he respects Johannes, but knows he's using him, and like their relationship has an expiration date.
So Faisal still goes high as shit on here, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I think you talked me into putting him a little higher than I would have expected. I also think it's cool that he gives Blake such a good deal in like Arc 11, where he's like,
he really does.
One, I can let you travel from the abyss and here as freely. Like I'm just gonna give you that ability.
Which seems like a very rare and huge boon that probably not a lot of people have.
Other big boon is I'm just gonna give you enough of yourself to where it'll heal a lot of the damage you just took of your own being. Damn. And Blake says no to both of them because like I think there was something more beneficial or more pressing at the time. But even Blake's like, damn, these are good deals.
I know, dude.
So that was cool. How about A?
Yeah, I was gonna put him like bottom of A. He goes above Johannes for me.
Okay, that's fair. You know what? I can live with this. All right, you go.
Dude.
I think Green Eyes needs to go, TBH.
Let's do Green Eyes. Green Eyes came out of nowhere for me, man.
Dude.
But we always knew.
We somehow, some way, we always knew because of Deep Impact.
You know what, man? You know what? Like, cemented her into my heart is whenever she asks if she can eat Blake, and Blake is like, I guess I'll be dead, so it doesn't matter. Yeah, whatever. If I die, you can eat me.
Cool.
And she says, cool. But Blake says she says it in a way that he imagined it was spelled Kewl.
Cool.
And I'm like, she just feels so natural and casual to me. Like, she speaks like such a normal person, but she's down here in the abyss and
like a scared, like skittery normal person.
And it's really sad. Her whole thing is that she kind of had nobody. Like, I think maybe she had family members alive, but they didn't care for her. She didn't have any friends. I think she had a pet, but like it died. So there was like genuinely at a time in her life where she felt like no one really knew she existed or cared if she lived or died. So she went on a walk one day and she eventually saw what she thought was like a grocery store, but there were no windows or doors on any sides. And she's like, huh, that's weird. And she's like, oh, I'm in the abyss.
That's crazy. And then like how she became murmified is such a like hauntingly interesting sequence where some other weird mermaid creature like keeps bringing her air and food and like feeding it to it through her mouth, and her body mutates with the abyss, and she becomes a mermaid person until she has the strength to swim out. That's
Yeah.
so weird.
And man, I think with what's at the core of her character, that's also kind of tragic for her that she came here with no friends or people who cared about her. And then she had someone spend weeks with her, saving her and transforming her so she can survive here. But then that person left and she never got to say thank you. And I think abandonment is such a traumatic thing for her that she will do anything to not lose Blake. Anything.
Yeah. Which, man, really good. Like, when Blake doesn't have agency for himself in the story, it's her who's the looming threat of, like, don't do anything too crazy right now or I immediately will kill you, Rose. Like, the creepiness of her from other people's eyes is the same as, like, Bogeyman Blake from other people's eyes is just such a different beast than when we're in their head, or, like, yeah, it's just cool how Blake slowly comes to term with, like, accepting this weird mermaid girlfriend, potentially. Her design is so cool. This artwork is fantastic.
Dude, when she asks Blake for that kiss.
And then she kisses him, and then, like, it stings his cheek because she's just so weird and corrosive.
Man.
And then she just straight up murks some dude, man. She, like, gloves people. Her tail's like barbs. So she goes ham near the end.
And you know what? When Blake reaches this happy place at the end, you know who's there with him?
Her. Dude, let's save that epilogue talk for the end, because I feel like I have so much to say about that epilogue.
Oh, for sure.
I think she might be low S.
I was gonna put her at the very least above Mags. I feel like she is the Mags of the second half.
Yeah.
Mags was our young girl sidekick for the first half. Green Eyes is our girl sidekick for the second half.
But Green Eyes was like true, like, ride or die, man. She just wants to be loved.
I don't even think Blake was obligated to bring her out of the abyss. He just wanted to do it. That's
such an interesting chapter. We do Mags and Corvidae. We're summoning both of them. Ooh. And then we get, like, 2 paragraphs of, like, and then Blake summon, like, Green Eyes. And with the Phasol agreement, part of it was getting Green Eyes out. Like, he really, like, this is just Blake stuff, though. Like, I could go on and
on. Let's put her above Laird.
Yeah, you know what? That's
that real?
Fair. If anyone can beat Laird, it's Green Eyes.
Yeah, I think you're right. If anyone can beat Laird.
I feel like in my heart there was more S tier characters, but I guess
they're coming. They're coming.
Yeah, but, like, when I picture of Pact, I think, like, S tier has, like, 10 characters, like Worm does.
That's the thing. A for Pact is
it's like
S
very
plus.
Strong. Yeah,
it's S plus for other stories. So.
It's true. That's true. That's a good point. All right. I think we get rid of the barber here. The final antagonist.
Ooh.
Man, as soon as he's introduced, what a creepy monster. The smell of the burning hair, so much atmosphere, the looming threat that's there since Arc 1.
We just kind of always knew he was going to be the end game.
Yeah, at the very least, but I couldn't picture him being this end game. We're fighting him in the last chapter still. That's crazy.
And man, you know what? Wildbow really threw me for a loop, because there was a point where I was about to message you that I was very underwhelmed by Barbatorum, because, you know, he had been built up the entire story as, like, even more powerful than maybe even a level up there, and it's basically this metaphorical nuke that Grandma Rose had, and then whenever they initially fight him at the library, you know, obviously
Blake is able to physically repel, like, his scissor strikes, for example.
Like, stuff like that, and the knight was able to budge him and stuff like that. So I was sitting here, I was like, they're actually able to fight him, and then they lock him away in Johannes and dump him into the abyss, and I was like, damn, that was resolved pretty quickly and easily. What the fuck? I guess Barbatorum wasn't that bad after all. And then the next arc, you hear the shears and the pipes, and then Barbatorum comes back in Johannes's body.
That was nuts, dude.
That's when shit really starts, and I was like, no, okay, you know what, Barbatorum? All right, final boss.
That's, like, he became the Kepri, where he's combining 3 things into, like, the ultimate being.
Goddamn.
And it's, like, a scene that lives, like, I want to see this scene adapted so bad. It's when, like, they get to the final frontier, they've gone through the domain, and they just have the last tower stronghold to get to. and they look out in the horizon, and there's a bunch of others, and like the giant that had his face burned off, and the dragon, and then all the portals in the sky that Fazol's opened, and I can just picture the camera panning through all that. And then you get to Fazol, who's sitting down with his wings spread, and then you get to Johannes on his throne, playing with the shears like the most villainous dude ever.
Oh,
like, it's such a cool visual.
The way he describes him playing with the shears is always so good.
Like, I can just picture the camera panning with, like, insane music playing as we get to Johannes, and he looks at the screen and smiles. Ooh!
One amazing thing Barbatorum does is, like, people talk at him all the time, but we never hear him speak until, like, the second to last chapter.
And he's like, yeah, I could speak all along.
I could speak all along. It's just like, why would I?
And, like, isn't there a thing where, like, he can get stuck in people's eye reflections, and I love when he throws the scissors and teleports through them. That's such a cool attack. That library sequence
he can throw the scissors and then jump into the reflection of the scissors.
That's so cool, man. Yeah, jumping to the reflection, which is cool because it makes him the anti-Blake, and he's Blake and Rose's dad.
Oh, I know, dude. And let's not forget the attack we mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, where he shoots up like one set of blades, shoots up a second set of blades, and then they all scissor together through the terrain.
That's so cool, man. Yeah, I think once he had control of the domain and he starts like being able to manipulate it and create others for them to fight, it's kind of like a Echidna situation, right? Where he's very strong, but also he relies on sending mobs at you.
Yeah, and it's kind of like it's very beneficial up to a certain point because he kept cutting up these mobs, making them very, distressed. So they're trying to kill our protagonists, and there's like a crush of bodies, but the more he cuts them, the less functional they get, or they start destroying each other. So kind of stuff like that. Because at the end of the day, a demon can't create. When he cuts one of these things,
that's such a cool thing.
When he cuts one of these people into two, both of them add up to less than the starting product.
How do you feel about the way he was defeated? Because it was almost so anticlimactic, or maybe like I just had a different defeat in mind where the climax went over my head almost.
I did feel a little bit of that, and what I'll ultimately say, and we'll talk about it more later, I think Worm had a more satisfying like final fight chapter, but Pact does its after the story way better.
Yeah, I think like Pact has like I think Pact, right? The theme that we were building in that last arc is that humanity is the change that like can be for the good or the better among others, because they influence others and angels and demons.
And that's the thing, like so many people, including both angels and demons, made cases for, oh, humans are actually closer to demons, and other characters made arguments like, no, humans are actually closer to angels, and some people are like, no, they're actually both.
Because even an angel like Fazol, it was a completely different being before humans. Like, humans have the impact of impacting people that predate them.
Yeah.
So so at the end of the story, we really take that like fake it till you make it epitaph, and we kind of reverse engineer to break down everything that Barbatorum claims he is until he has nothing. But then he just gets chucked out the window by the window demon or other, which was really funny, but also like completely caught me off guard.
Man, and you know what Rose's advice for the final battle was? Her one tip? Believe you can do it. Pact is a shonen, man.
It really did become shonen, but it earned it completely.
But like that's the thing. That's a mechanic in the story. If you believe you can do it, you can do it.
It almost seems simple, but the story was so dire that like it had to be built up that way. I think it worked out well. So, I think because he's a demon, he doesn't get to be S tier. But I think he's such a cool antagonist.
Is he above or below Miss Lewis?
I like him more than Miss Lewis.
I think so.
I like him more than Maggie too.
He has so much clout. Like
yeah, I think he executes like when Blake is kind of going head to head against him. I also felt like he has to have more within him. I felt while they were climbing up the tower, I could already see how he's scary because of the teleportation and how careful everyone was being. And then it
That's
just
the thing.
scales from there. Once
They
he takes
finally
over.
they spent this whole time running away from him because he was below them and they want to get out of the abyss. And then they get out and he's already waiting for them up there.
Yeah, that very very cool final villain, and it is Scion-esque, right? Where like you can't attribute too many human qualities to him, so he comes off as like a weird character as a
Yeah.
result.
And one thing I appreciated is that while I love the like huge multiversal stakes of Worm, I'm kind of glad that like these are like global stakes, but they're also kind of not. Because like what's really at risk here is Jacob's Bell and the people related to it.
And in a much grander
Now,
scale, the balance of the planet.
that's the thing.
But
Like it's global in the sense that like demons in the firm are working against humanity as a whole. But like,
and Barbatorum does have access to bring more demons into this realm, which could be scary.
yeah,
So, but it's like a slow corruption of the world. It's not like the world ends directly because of this, you know?
dude, what was fucking terrifying is like Blake looked up through one of those portals and saw like a planet, and he said it looked like looking at the planet looked like fuzz or TV static. But then whenever they got a closer look at it, what he thought was the static was actually like billions of human bodies.
Jesus, man.
Like holy shit.
Also worth noting that arc, the giant centipede monster that's chasing them up.
Oh
the
my
tower.
God!
That was horrifying.
Come on.
Come on! I think that's fair.
Guys, come on.
Rose
All
Thorburn
right.
Sr.?
Let's do it. What can we say about Our Lady?
I love her interludes. I love her, like, hey, let me possess you a little bit so that way you can blame anything on me, but, like, I'm gonna break you from your chains as, like, my first step to breaking everyone from their chains.
Dude, I flip-flopped about a half dozen times over the course of the story between she was a good guy and she was a bad guy.
Where did you end up? I guess good guy, right?
Man,
But good guy, bad person.
good guy, bad person, because like ultimately, she is reducing the foothold that firm has on the world. I think.
And, yeah, so
she's
like,
doing.
what do you view her plan as? Because I think the big takeaway I had, but I think there's more to her plan, which is why I'm asking you, is she also wants to create a Thorburn line that ends kind of with Rose, because she looks at the
Yeah.
other females and like, well, one's gay, one already has a child, but it's a boy. The other I've manipulated in some way, and Rose can't have a child, so she creates her
Yeah.
perfect heir, but then also makes that the karmic debt of the Thorburns ends there, which is
Yeah.
not her choice to make, but also I can't blame her because they got a lot.
Let me explain this situation as if I am Grandma Rose. I'm Grandma Rose. My family is a bunch of bad diabolists. We have like hundreds of years of karmic debt, thousands even. Fuck it. I, in a fucked up way, care for my descendants. I don't want them to have to deal with this karmic debt. And I deal with demons, but also I don't want the firm to kind of advance existence not existing anymore. I don't know. I want to work against them. If this karma keeps getting passed on, not only is that bad for my descendants, eventually one of them's going to cave and join the firm, and that's no good. So I want to make sure we go bankrupt, and there is no descendants for the karma to go on to.
Yeah, and
So-
there is no normal way to bankrupt, so I have to take some extra
Yeah.
steps.
So it's like she's saving her family by making sure they never get born, kind of, in the future, but also harming the firm because a powerful line is no longer in their grasp. So she makes Molly first, I think, just because she knows Molly will die, and she wants the first one to be a warning to the second, who is kind of her best bet. And her plan was to have Blake live just long enough for Rose to learn how practicing works, and then by the time he's dead, she can fend for herself.
Like the buffer.
And then even if somehow the ideal heir fails, pretty much the rest of them were set to fail because, you know, like you said, Paige isn't going to yield an heir. Catherine yielded an heir, but it was a boy. Blah, blah, blah. One of them's a baby who will obviously die unless they're really good at what they do.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, it's fascinating, and you know what? I'm mad at her, but also cool plan. She's fucking nuts.
She did pretty good.
And I like how she teams up with Aemon to like kind of cripple the Thorburns, but also arm them to fight demons. Like, I'm gonna create your ultimate rivals to balance out the way that you're gonna navigate the world when I'm gone. It's very interesting.
I loved this element where when she went off to boarding school, like she was raised in a Diabolist family, but then she's like, those kids are having premarital sex.
I know, that was funny. Yeah, I love both her young and teenage diaries as well.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she's great. Every time she comes up, she's fascinating. She is the true catalyst for this story. Her plan to split up Blake and Rose is so conniving. But it's you can't bring yourself to fully hate her just because of how much the story needs her, and how she's kind of fighting for a weird greater good. So,
because that's the thing is, she wasn't doing what she did to be an asshole. She is an asshole, but she had a noble goal. So
yeah, let's just do some eugenics.
Yeah, right.
Well, she's A at least.
A at least.
Could we make the argument for S even?
That's the thing. Like, does she go above Green Eyes?
Her reputation precedes her.
That's the thing. Like, she within the world of Diabolist, she's like, she ain't nobody, man.
Like her writings on how all others came from demon, and I feel like she started planting the seeds that humanity can fight back through belief into Rose.
Yeah.
I could make an argument for lowest S or
you know what?
Green
Let's
Eyes.
do lowest S.
Yeah,
I'm down.
That's
I'm
fair.
down for it.
That's fair. All of these are going
give me-
into S, but just what in what order?
Yeah, give me like 10 seconds real quick.
I'll give you a minute because I need a minute. We got our final three.
Jesus.
I guess we'll do Evan first.
I think Evan is just one of the most beloved characters Wildbow's ever wrote. Even on the subreddit, like, anytime Evan ever comes up, people are like, oh my god, it's Evan.
I could see people being annoyed by Evan because he's very immature, but I think he's well written.
This story would have been way too depressing and grimdark without him.
Peter and Evan really hold it together in the comedy department for those last 2 or 3 arcs.
And man, I'm so glad we finally got Phoenix Evan.
Because, oh my god.
That was being built up so much in the story that eventually I reached a point where I'm like, oh, maybe like the joke is it'll never happen. But then I was like, no, like genuinely, it's been teased so much that if we didn't get Phoenix Evan, the story might have actually dropped a few points for me.
That's not even a lie. And then Elder Sister's like, no, let's hear him out.
I was like, fucking thank you, because like he doesn't even give Blake or Rose the chance to object. She's like, let's hear him out, and he's like, I want this, and I want this, I want this. She's like,
let's do it.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, fuck, let's do it.
You know what? That was a cool way to incorporate the sisters because they use a lot of fire. I was like, yeah, we'll feed you with fire spirits.
And there was also a cool callback after he turned into a phoenix, because the first time Evan ever gets drunk is when like
the stank
they
bomb.
They get the stank bomb, and he's super drunk. He's like, people get drunk on purpose. This sucks. I never want to be drunk again. But then to fight one of those demons, they had to get everyone a little bit drunk.
Yeah, it was the one that Roxanne wasn't affected by. And Evan. Yeah.
And Evan had like a reversal. He's like, being drunk is awesome.
Oh, Evan, we've all gone through it. Yeah, like Evan is Blake's first real ally, and their blooming relationship is, not to mince words, maybe the best part of the story.
Dude, one of my favorite moments of dialogue in the entire story.
Oh my god, I'm about to cry.
Is when Evan like first sees Blake's motorcycle, and he describes it as like very childlike excitement. He's like, "You have a motorcycle?" And Blake said he smiled, which stuck out to me because I think it was the first time the story even mentions Blake smiling, and he's like, "Hell yeah, I have a motorcycle."
Motorcycles are cool, right?
Oh man.
And then like Blake, when he's still like he's going to go Like he's in the prison and Evan's helping him out, and they're not quite familiar yet. They haven't done the ritual yet, I don't think. But Blake talks to him and has a heart to heart where it's like, Evan, you didn't deserve those things done to you. You didn't deserve what happened to you. And he has to come to terms that he himself did not deserve what happened to him.
God.
And like he had never really taken that step mentally before. And that was like such a good bonding moment and such a touching moment. I think we've talked about it in the podcast before.
God, I love this kid.
But then Blake disappears, and my heartbreak that Evan does not remember Blake is just palpable.
I know, and like the thing is, when Blake is in the drains and is able to like see peaks of Evan in the visions, he sees that Evan is like looking sickly and has like feathers falling out, and it's like, no, he's dying because his best friend's not there.
It's brutal, but then the story's like it's not too dreary because no matter what, they reform that connection, and that's kind of beautiful. But, and this is where things get dark, Blake's influence on Evan for a couple of those arcs is really questionable and made me really uneasy.
Like whenever Blake is in horror movie monster mode.
Yeah, he has like Evan be complicit in murdering people. And I feel like the story did a maybe poor job at kind of explaining why Evan was okay doing that kind of stuff. I don't know if you got that sense.
There probably could have been more of it.
Cause like, I feel like Evan never calls Blake out for all the stuff he's doing, but then also like he's so impressionable and he trusts Blake so much. I just wish it was discussed a little more. I could see why it happened. I just don't know if it had enough dialogue or thought lines.
Maybe as Blake becomes less human, Evan also becomes less human, because I don't know if their familiar bond was actually broken.
I feel like it was reforged. It was broken and then reforged. Because nothing to say you can't. I think Rose even implies that like broken connections can be rebuilt near the end.
Because like Blake is also a lot more blasé about murder than he was at the start of the story. So if that happened to him, maybe that just happens to Evan too.
I could see that. Yeah. I'd like to see if any commenters' thoughts on like how they felt that.
I want to hear about it.
But then and then it's weird because Blake benches him for the final mission after he goes all Phoenix mode. That was kind of not something I would expect.
Yeah. I don't know. Let me think. There was one other thing I remembered I want to talk about Evan. I think, and Blake even remarks on this at one point, that Evan kind of offers a different viewpoint that he appreciates from a lot of practitioners. Mm-hmm. It's a very childlike viewpoint that he feels like is kind of helpfully simple, where people will be arguing about all these different plans they can take, and like seeing who will benefit from each one and what advantages and downsides there are. But Evan will take like a very like simple stance of like, okay, well, this one is the nice one to do, so let's do that one. Then
he can cut through the chaff and get to the point of it, which is kind of also his power.
Because like when he puts it that way, if he's like, oh, this is the nice option to do, he's like, well, it's hard to karmically argue with that. So,
but yeah, like we could go on and on about Evan. He has so many good scenes, so many good gags. I like him playing video games with Ty. I like him playing cards and being good at cheating. Like, just such a lovable character. He's obviously the best one on the list right now, right? Let's be real,
man. So if the only person I would be okay putting above him is Peter.
Oh, okay, yes, not counting these two.
Yeah, I'd be okay putting Peter above him, but honestly, like Evan would deserve it.
I don't think Evan was been in the story since Arc 4.
Yeah,
and he did not suffer from Blake. Like, he did not suffer in screen time from Blake disappearing, because they immediately start having scary bird and scary tree person adventures.
Yeah, I think Evan is one of those characters where everything Wildbow set out to do with this character, he succeeded. Like, it's really hard to so confidently make a character that you hope people will like in this little kid bird and succeed so hard at it, because everyone loves Evan.
Yeah. Man. I'm going to push for him being the first right now. Talk to me about Rose Jr.
Rose Jr., another one of those characters, much like Rose Sr., where like 6 times over the book, I was like, she's a good guy, she's a bad guy, she's a good guy,
Jesus.
she's a bad
Yeah, but
guy.
this one hit me more. Like, because Rose is dead and gone, and it's just the impact of her decisions, and you don't know everything about her. Rose is doing actual actions that are testing my patience in a
Yeah,
good way.
and you know, because of the nature of her and Blake being created, it's natural that they clash against each other, but there's always all these times where Blake from Blake's point of view, Rose can seem kind of robotic or unfeeling, and that's how we see her for a lot of the story. And it turns out it's kind of true because tragically, from her point of view, she never got to make connections with people. She didn't have friends. She didn't really learn how to care about people.
Yeah,
And
Rose Senior deemed
God,
that not important for the heir,
God damn. And
and
so
I feel like you
obviously
don't get
she's
the
going to clash against Blake.
yeah, you don't get the full scope of it until you're in her mind near the end, where it's like, God, you're actually a tragic character.
Yeah, and her appeal is very different in the two halves of the story because a lot of the first half of the story, her appeal is that she has a very good dynamic with Blake where he's in control, she's not, and they kind of resent each other for it. And more specifically, that you don't know if she's actually an ally or an enemy. Because I think around the Toronto arc, I could have believed Rose would be the final boss of Pact.
Same.
um,
Actually, I thought that right before we got to Arc 7,
yeah,
because she was starting to summon these demons who became recurring characters, or these others, and I had it in my mind where, like, the final arc might be going through her others and then finally doing her in, but, like, James Corviday being an important part or something. Didn't
yeah.
go that way.
And I don't know. The second half of the story, we finally get to kind of jump into her mind really and see where she's coming from, and that's where like the curve of her character arc begins, and she
Because
grows in a very satisfying way.
I mean, we don't really get to see her mind till the very end. She's like really
Yeah.
the antagonist of a lot of the second half because it's so
Hmm.
frustrating. But also, like, she has knowledge. So my question is, how long does she have knowledge of what they are? That was after they came back, right?
I think after they came back, she read the diaries and was able to determine
That
like
she's
that
also a
they were made by the
vestige.
demon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but then also, and this confused me forever. She didn't do the awakening ritual in the start. She faked it. That almost seemed like a plot hole when we got to that reveal.
Maybe. I would have to reread it and see like what the fuck.
Yeah, because I'm like, maybe there's some scenes that wouldn't work, but whatever. Regardless, her character's amazing, and I got a lot of empathy for her near the end. And her character arc of becoming a shonen protagonist by draining Blake of his protagonism was actually like so well done.
Ah,
She's
damn.
giving the hero speeches. She's doing the girl bossing and the girl slaying.
I know.
Yeah, I I'd make an argument she could be number one on the list too.
Uh,
She's just so
can I
interesting.
settle for between Evan and Peter?
You could settle for that. I will settle for that. The reason
But
is
hear me out
the
though.
story. Like she is packed. Like
Mhm.
her and Blake are packed. Everyone else
Like
is accessory.
when you are on chapter 1 and 2, the reason you are reading Pact is because Rose exists and you want to know what the fuck is going on.
Honestly, yeah.
Like I think that was one of the things I sold to you on the story is that he has a mirror twin thing.
And
And
you couldn't ever have like the moments where they work against each other contrasted with the rare moments where they work together. That ebb and
yeah,
flow is just the driving, like the lifeline of Pact is their ups and downs.
you know
And weirdly,
what?
like they have a
It's
lot
the
of ups
lifeline. You're
near
right.
the end too. Like near the end, they're like when they're at their lowest, where they know that they can never work together, they start working together, and you're
I
like,
know.
nothing's written in stone. Don't box them in a box. Like don't put these vestiges in a box. They could change what they are, and it's really well executed. It's not just like a theme that's explained. Like it's explored the entire story, how they work against their own
Man,
nature. Anywho,
gotta love it.
that brings us to the man himself.
Come on. man.
We put him in the S tier of our worm tier list, if you'll recall.
Oh yeah, he was on there, wasn't he?
I think we were just like, I don't know why, but we were like, Blake Thorburn would be double S.
Yeah, like. And
I
you know what? He's low key double S on this tier list too.
honestly, I think he's the best character in the story.
He's the best character in the story.
I would be cool with putting him in double S. I
Yes,
am
dude.
fascinated by how
And,
well executed this character was.
Blake is the character I've thought about the most since the story ended because I have to sit down and go, when I finished the story, I had to go, okay, what is Blake's arc? That's what you got to ask for your main character. And, in comparison with Taylor and Worm, I think hers was like very overtly stated in her final chapter. She's like, hey, this is what my arc was, here where I am now. I think Blake's arc is more subtle. I had to think about it a little bit more, and I can tell you where I think I'm at, and I want to hear your thoughts.
Yes.
So Blake, his greatest desire is freedom. And, he's always wanted many different kinds of freedom, personal freedom, financial freedom, freedom from family, freedom from just all kinds of stuff. And he wants to fly. But at the story's outset, Blake is already in a place where he has his own place, he can pay his own bills, he actually has a lot of the freedom he didn't have when he was homeless. And in a lot of senses, he has what he wants. But the thing is, he is not free. And the thing he is not free from is his past.
And
Pact.
And also, he doesn't exist. Like, that freedom is artificial.
And the thing is, some of the stuff that happened to him in the past, like the commune and shit, people are like, oh, it happened to Russ. Well, if it happened to Russ, it happened to Blake.
Blake got those memories. He has those emotions. That's what he has to work through. It doesn't matter that it was like Blake is a creature who has to work through that.
And I think what's really holding him back for most of the story is, trying to free himself from his past. And he literally has to confront his past in the drains. And he goes through a gradual process of, he gets almost on the right track, but slightly misled in the drains, where he's like, oh, well, if those events didn't really happen, then why am I letting them have a hold on me? And later on, he learns that, okay, those events actually did happen in the past, but like I've already demonstrated that I can choose to not let them have a hold on me. And he continues growing a little from there. But I think that's what a lot of his core arc is, and I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, definitely freedom is the main theme that's explored with Blake. It's really interesting because Alexis and Tiff make him better, but then he realizes that they're not real relationships in the conventional sense, and I think he starts spiraling back downwards, and he has to confront that in the drains, where Arc 9 was... To this day, Arc 9 is a kind of a feat in storytelling for me. It is so well made.
It's bizarre and unique. I've never read anything like it.
You could make a whole game about that setting of the Abyss, but then also how it fits into the realizing that Blake was the Vestige had me wanting to stop my car because I was driving at that moment and just yell into my steering wheel.
Pact had already kind of had twist after twist after twist. That was Pact's starting twist.
Yeah,
that's
the real Pact starts here. And
I was like, this is where the story fucking goes to shit. I don't know.
I almost get the feeling that Pact and Blake is an experiment of an author taking a character and removing so much from that character that you even remove their spot as the main character, and then even remove that they're a character altogether. You break down a whole entire character to an idea at the end. And
yeah, it's honestly, Blake's most base component is freedom, and that's all he embodies in the epilogue.
Yeah, and up to that point, it's a sharp decline where okay, Blake is a person with a troubled past. Blake is getting his ass kicked in and barely surviving. Blake fucking dies. Blake comes back and realizes he was never alive. Blake comes back and loses everyone he ever loved. Blake goes into a dark spiral of murder and revenge. Blake has to fight for his own life and his friends that don't care about him, to the point where he's reduced to nothing, a spirit. And then from that point on, all he can do is influence Rose and become a gross hand. And then we're led to believe that he's snuffed out in the final chapter. And then you get the epilogue, where all that's really left is that freedom of spirit. So it wasn't as dark as it seemed the step before. But, like, it's just an increase, like a decreasing step of, like, stuff getting worse and worse and this character being stripped down to his core. Which is so fascinating. Only in a story like this could you do that.
This story punishes its protagonist harder than any other story I've ever read, and yet there are stories that punish their protagonist less that I hate reading because they feel like torture porn. But Pact is like, even though Blake has it like so fucking hard, his struggle is very inspiring. And
that's the thing. Like, I think the main criticism I see about Pact is that it's unrelenting, and it can, like, the pace is too claustrophobic. How come we didn't feel that way? How come, like, I just explained how the story gets worse and worse, but is it just because it's so interesting? I don't know. I don't know how he did it, but...
Man, I think one way I really connected with Pact is, like, I started reading this story and, like, a year where it was like, boom, lost job, boom, breakup, boom, COVID hits, boom, the new job I got fired me because they can't pay me. And so I was just like going through the fucking shit. And then this story came along. So having another character that like made it feel like the universe was against him, I just kind of connected to it.
I've seen someone comment that in a Deep Impact Reddit post, and like, yeah, like, Pact is a story about perseverance. It's a story about finding the humanity where you can and moving forward, and it's crushing, but that last chapter is a fucking masterclass. I can't believe how good the epilogue is.
And that's the thing, I think, like, Wildbow went out on a limb, made a bold choice for the epilogue by having it not be from any of our characters' perspective, especially Blake, but it worked so good.
Yeah, like, you see that bird, it's Evan, and then you see a bigger bird, and you just start losing it. So, this begs a question. The final chapter of the story proper, not the epilogue, implies that Rose is so exhausted from beating the barber that the only way that she can live is to take Blake back into herself. What happened in the end? I think it almost implies that Rose sacrificed herself so Blake could be something.
I don't fucking know.
But, like, I feel like people will talk about that more if that was, like, a common take. So, like, what?
Yeah, I don't think that's what happened. I think she just lived long enough to get out of there, and they figured some shit out.
What kind of shit would they figure? Like, they would leave Blake in a collapsing land? Like, the way they that's another thing. The story's so, like, loosey-goosey, where it's like, I guess it could work anywhere anyway, but it felt like Blake was on his last ropes, and Rose was on their last ropes, and they couldn't freeze the situation. They had to address it right then. So, I don't know.
You know what I was about to say is they awaken Green Eyes and make Blake her familiar, but I'm like, Blake would never be someone's familiar, bitch.
If part of it is being alive, then yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
He almost considered being Alexis familiar, so you might be right.
Oh yeah. But
either way,
man,
either that or Rose gave a part of her genuine being so Blake could have anything left. But that's the thing. That's the kind of a weird part. Anyways, Blake's compassion towards things that aren't human, Blake's inner traumas, it just created such a, like, and he's not a Gary Stu. He's like the perfect character that's incredibly flawed. I don't know how Wildbow did it, but Blake is perfect for me.
Blake kicks as much ass as he does, even though Grandma Rose deliberately put the stuff into him that she deemed not valuable. Friendship, connections, empathy. But
But
those things are why he gets his allies and why he kicks
my
ass.
friends are my power.
I know.
But then he has to give that all to Rose. It's brilliant. It's the chapters where you're inside, like, I don't even consider it third person because you're Blake viewing Rose's perspective, so it's like a weird 3.5D perspective. I don't even know.
Because that's the thing. Most of the story is in the first person, Blake saying, like, I did this, I did
Yeah.
that, right? And then, like, with Blake, it's like, obviously, it's from Rose's, like, perspective, like her doing the actions, but it's using third person language because it's someone watching Rose,
And then for
but
a
that
period of
someone is
chapter,
inside Rose's body.
that someone has, like, he's able to dive into her memories, which when you dive into
God.
Rose's memories, it's so fascinating where you can see, like, where their lives converged and split. But it's just so cool because there's also certain chapters where you don't even get that 3.5 person anymore. You just straight up third person Rose until she gives Blake control of her body. So it's like you get first person all the story, then you get like 2 or 3 chapters of that weird perspective, and then it's just Rose. And at that point, I was like, oh, is Blake just gone for the rest of the series? But he does come back a little bit.
That's the thing. I was worried, like, for a lot of Arc 16, I was like, I want to hear Blake's voice one more time.
And now he's just a bird who protects bikers.
When he was just sitting there as a hand with an eyeball in it, I was like, what the fuck?
I know, like, imagine reducing your main character to such a pitiful state, and he doesn't get reverted from that. He just gets changed into another weird state.
But you know what? I think Blake's happiness level in the epilogue of this is
It felt so serene. It was such a
it felt
peaceful
serene.
chapter.
Yeah.
Like, I felt lifted. And it's probably, it might, the Deep Impact guys were like, this might be a better outcome than even he had planned. Like, when he thought about his future.
I thought Blake was just gonna go to fucking hell and just be hell person.
Me too. I thought he would be Hellboy.
Yeah.
But here he is, like, literally shedded all his past except for his 2 best friends.
Man. Like, this really is the best case scenario he could have got. Like, Wild Bill's never gonna write a happier ending than this, right? Unless I don't know what Pale's gonna end like, or has Pale ended at this point?
It just did 15.z today.
What the fuck?
Yeah, we need to give Pale more chances. I know people want us to do that.
Okay.
People also really want us to do Ward, and like that's probably last in my list of Wild Bill stories I want to read.
Man, I think the next thing I want to try might be Twig.
It'd be cool
the Twig
going in
audiobook
order. Yeah, Twig audiobook is complete. Twig, wait a
By the
minute.
way, thanks for reading the story, Willer, because Wild Bill stories are no small undertaking, and so like I think you reading it is what like kind of pushed me to also want to keep reading, and so that was cool.
Yeah, we kept each other going because like it seems like, but I mean, let's be real. The story's so good. I mean, Wild he hooked me so hard. Like, shout outs to him. I think he outdid himself. From his retrospectives, he seemed a little down on the story. And I think I got some more context because it seems like he was taking more breaks than he was happy about. And et cetera, et cetera. But the point is, Wildbow, if you ever listen to this, I think you should be so proud because this story means a lot to me. And like I said, it's my favorite book right now. And a story that I'm going to come back to and never forget because just something about it. And I can see why people like may not like it as much as some of your other stories, but like it just clicked right for me. I don't know.
Yeah, it feels truly unique among fiction, like within a genre that is so saturated. Like there's so many dark fantasy stories even, but he's created a system and a setting and characters here that feels so unique.
Like,
and you're not. God,
there's multiple times where I was like, this is a story about stories or language or it's a story that's abstracting literature itself. It was blowing my mind at just like how weird it was in very subtle ways. Like it's not being weird by like, and then like a shrimp that shoots lasers. Like it's not random or it's not like completely abstract. It's just written in a way that I've never seen anything written.
He's just genuinely one of the most creative motherfuckers.
Yeah, I put him up there with Oda as like an Iraqi as just human beings that think different from the rest of the
Yeah,
party.
like what is going on in their brain?
Bradley, what are your favorite arcs for us to wrap this up? First of all, let me scroll through our list.
Ooh.
This is our tier list.
Yeah.
It's missing
Old
Amon
Craig.
Beheim. Amon B. Craig. Amon Beheim is
Craig.
probably like an A tier or B tier, you know?
Oh yeah, he didn't have a ticket, but yeah,
But
he's
cool.
up there.
I like him. There's our list. Favorite
Man.
arcs, if you got any.
My first and second arc are very close, man. I'm
think
trying to
I
decide.
have a standout favorite, and I know which one it is, but then I'm not sure about the next two or three.
I think favorite arc could maybe be the police station.
Which I think is 6 or 5. I'm gonna say 5.
Yeah, and then my very close second, which could be first if you ask me on a different day of the week, is it's either 12 or 13. It's basically the Home Alone arc where Peter really gets to be the MVP.
Yep.
I love that shit. Third favorite might be arc 9, the drains.
For me, 15 is my favorite, bar none. That's when they're in the library. I was just like, the tension was high. The battles were incredible.
Oh yeah.
That has Blake becoming a spirit. It has the Abyss testing Blake. It has fighting the barber. Before the lawyers show up, I think that's peak.
Willer! Character who's an S tier who didn't even get a ticket. Window guy who pushed Barbatorum off the fucking platform.
Window guy is like up there with Evan at the very lowest.
I love his introduction because like Blake pulls Roxanne into one of the windows, and that other is like looking at her, and Blake's like, no. And it's like, okay. Aw.
I'll be back later. I'll push someone down the window. So yeah, I think 15's my favorite. 9's my second favorite. I could not, but like 9 changed the way that I view like hell or any cool like underworld setting. They pale in comparison to the texture of the drains and how disorienting it was. Oh my god.
That's the thing, is there's thousands of hells, but like there's only one drains to me.
And then I think the next, I would say the police station arc is the next. And then 16, the final arc, would be 4th. And then like, I don't know. There's a lot of arcs that could slid into that. I definitely got a definitive top 4. But yeah.
Now, my final thing, which is mostly me thinking out loud because I haven't actually decided how I feel yet. I gotta decide, which do I like better, this or Worm?
Yeah.
And so it's like undeniably the writing quality of this is just so much more professional. This is a better written, the dialogue is better, the action's written better.
Yeah, the dialogue's a lot better actually. And I feel like the action is preference. I prefer this one.
Yeah. That's the thing, like
Worm has big team battles, but I feel like they get messy and long. This has tighter chaos battles that focus more on, I think, the story. There's even not that many fights when you get down to, Worm has like several fights per arc.
I think in Worm I usually like the context or like the scope of the battle more, but like the actual actions people take within the battles, I might like it more here.
It's more JoJo-y, where like it's lower stakes, like mental battles, as opposed to Leviathan and Behemoth kind of stuff.
Obviously, I like the pacing of Pact more. It just fucking goes. And there's slow chapters in Worm, and while I do agree that even within those slow chapters, there are things that are necessary, the necessary things could have been like put into other chapters sometimes.
Yeah, or shortened in some way.
I think I like Worm's final arc better. Like Kepri versus Scion is fucking unbelievable to me.
Spec is hot. That's my favorite Worm arc.
It's unfucking believable. I think I like that finale battle better, but I like Pact's like epilogue better and like where the main character ends up, I think.
I like Spec as a fight better. I like what is built up with Judgment and like how it wraps up the story really well as well. Because like at the end of Pact or Worm, the universe is so fractured and destroyed from Scion's battle. where I'm almost daunted to go into any more stories because like the multiverse has been blown apart, and I'm less invested when the multiverse gets that open. It's kind of a worry I have with the MCU right now.
That's
And
the thing is,
but like
I
Pact leaves me on a point where it's like I need more. I need immediate sequel now.
that's the thing. Like Pact, in a very similar but different way to Part Four of JoJo's, like you could write infinite stories in this setting.
Yeah.
Uh, in I don't know with Worm, a long time because Worm's been out for over a decade, and a long time before Ward was ever announced. It was always my opinion that like I don't really know how you could make a sequel to Worm because I don't know, it's a little fucked up at the end.
And I mean, they did it, and I think a lot of people like it.
A lot of
Some
people like
don't.
it. A lot of people don't. Also,
But yeah, it's worth
Who's
noting
there?
that Worm, if you haven't watched any of the other stuff, Worm has been Bradley's favorite book for a long time.
yeah, and I'm trying to decide if Pact is actually my favorite. I'm not sure. I think it's still probably easier to recommend Worm to people if someone was asking me for a good book because I actually have gotten quite a few people, like a shitload of people to read Worm actually, and I
To
think
be
at least
to be fair, if you, yeah, I guess it depends how much they like superhero stories. Pact
yeah,
is more my speed. Worm was actually a
exactly.
challenge for me to get through the first couple of arcs there. So
I don't know. I'll think about it, but either way, they are
what?
both
You
good
said you'd
motherfucking
come
books.
up with an answer, coward.
I can't. I'm a coward.
Bradley, you're lying. I
I'm
forsworn
scared.
you.
Damn it.
I
Guess I'll die.
I definitely like. I think you've read Worm multiple times, so I feel a Pact
Oh
reread
yeah, for
would be
sure.
needed before you can truly make
Yeah,
that decision to yourself.
I would need to do the second.
And yeah,
Man.
maybe twig or pale sometime on this channel again in the future. But for now, thank you for joining us on Wildbow Talks because that's kind of been a weird staple of this channel, despite like it being sporadic.
That's the thing. Even back when we were probably like sub 30 subscribers and our videos might only get like 10 views each, like there was one Worm video we put out where it got like a couple hundred views